It was a beautiful, bright, sunny day when the young man challenged the law of gravity and lost. He opened his eyes, only to realize something completely insane was happening. He was plummeting straight off the school roof. Meanwhile, bunch of his classmates just watched him fall without a single care. They did not care at all. Graduation was close, and yet this happened. He had endured years of brutal bullying. Now, today was the end. It was his death day. Fast forward 3 months, and for some folks, the local municipal hospital had become the only place they ever spent time. The doctors flatly told his grieving grandmother that patients in his state never wake up. A permanent vegetative state, they said. That was when he realized he was actually still alive, trapped inside his own paralyzed body, showing absolutely zero signs of life. Only his devoted grandmother stayed, sitting by his bedside, praying he would finally wake up. Feeling her gentle touch and hearing her voice was all he had left. Before this nightmare, he had never even been sick a day in his life. Now he clung to the hope of waking up, but time mercilessly dragged on. And nothing ever changed. His grandmother quietly whispered that the doctors suggested letting him go, but she just could not do it. Since his parents passed away, she was the one who raised him alone, acting as both his mother and father. Now, she just wanted one small sign that her grandson was still in there. Then, his younger brother came to visit. The boy wept by the bedside, saying he could not handle the pain any longer. Once the school bullies finished ruining the older brother, they targeted his younger brother next. To make matters worse, the boy admitted their poor grandmother was working endless night shifts to pay the hospital. She was running out of time. He begged his brother to wake up. Their grandmother had badly injured her back, and they had absolutely nothing left. He had to wake up right now, but he simply could not. Locked in his own head, he could not cry, wake up, or die. Perhaps this was all just one long, terrible nightmare. If he could just hold on a little longer, surely he would open his eyes, and everything would be fine. He just had to wait. 3 years passed, 3 long years. The nurses taking care of him gossiped quietly, whispering about how the old grandmother had collapsed and was now critically ill. Can you actually believe these nurses felt absolutely zero pity? Instead, they planned to ignore him completely, refusing to waste time on a silent patient. Deep inside, the faces of his cruel classmates kept flashing in his mind. Those arrogant monsters who pushed him over the edge were still out there, ruining other lives while the teachers actively chose to look away. He vowed that if a miracle ever brought him back to life, he would utterly destroy every single one of them. But time dragged on, and he remained helplessly trapped under those cold hospital machines. Then, a massive hand of pure justice suddenly grabbed one of the bullies by the skull. The bully looked up at his terrifying attacker, the very same boy who no longer cared about mercy, because nothing compares to what they stole, condemning him to a miserable life in a hospital bed. None of those thugs even could ever comprehend the agony of his grandmother holding her helpless grandson in her arms, even if he drenched the entire city in the blood of those thugs. It still would not be enough. This is no simple revenge. 4 long years passed in that bed, plenty of time to devise a perfect plan to completely wipe those scoundrels out, leaving absolutely nothing of them behind. Soon the young man realized his plan was flawless. This was exactly what he needed to do: erase those monsters from the face of the earth. His blueprint for revenge was set, but one massive obstacle remained. He never recovered. 10 long years passed, and no matter how much he thought about it, his situation remained hopeless. No one could help, so he decided to put an end to his worthless life. Perhaps then his drifting soul would find a new body and finally execute his ultimate plan for revenge. But then a sudden sound from a television catches his attention. It sounded like some high school broadcast was playing. Slowly, he opens his eyes and sees an ordinary classroom blackboard. Looking around, he sees his young classmates Laughing, gossiping, and fooling around, he cannot understand what is actually happening. He stares in disbelief, completely unable to comprehend where he has ended. Up at first, he assumes it is just a dream, but when he pinches his arm and feels sharp pain, his eyes lock onto a pen on his desk. If this is real, it will hurt and bleed. Without hesitating, he slams the pen right into his leg and watched as blood drips onto the floor. It is real. He has returned. But before he can even process this, a loud scream echoes as a vicious bully slams a classmate onto the floor, kicking him and shouting that he is going to teach this worthless trash a painful lesson. Right then, he realizes something absolutely wild. He actually traveled back to his past. Staring at the bully, he realizes he is back at the starting point of his endless nightmare. This is the exact moment that originally ruined his entire life and locked him in a vegetative state. And just like the first time, every single classmate stands on the sidelines, too terrified to intervene. But he stands up, walks over, and demands that the bully stop. The blonde boy laughs, completely caught off guard. He assumes he must have misheard. Still smirking, the bully turns and warns Kim Hyun to stay out of it. The punk is confident that this wannabe hero, Hyun, is no different from the kid on the floor and will get the exact same treatment, but Kim Hyun does not let him finish, smashing a heavy fist into that smug, smiling face with all his strength. He is finally back in his first year of high school, returned to the exact moment he needed most. The young man remembers every detail of this fateful day that shattered his life. Park Min-chul was the class tyrant, a total menace who never listened to teachers and loved tormenting weaker kids. Today, he was playing Legend online in class, forcing a quiet, bespectacled classmate to grind his account. That day, Lee Jongmin became Min-chul's gaming slave, forced to grind levels without a single complaint. Min-chul knew this smart, quiet boy received a massive allowance from his parents for his good grades, and now the young man had to buy him things. But then came the moment when Jongmin could not take the endless abuse any longer, boldly declaring he would never again deal with Min-chul's constant problems. This was the day his classmates witnessed this brutal violence firsthand. Before all this, the main character had spent countless hours tutoring Jongmin and helping him with all of his homework and explaining hard lessons. Today, it felt unbearably painful to watch his only friend get beaten senseless while nobody stepped in to help. His classmates truly believed they would never be strong enough to defend poor Jongmin from this bully anyway, fearing that stepping in would only make Min-chul even angrier. The protagonist understood his friend's worries, but Hyun-sung had always been at the absolute top of the class in gym, easily outperforming everyone else, and now he demanded the beating stop. Luckily, the teacher returned just in time to settle things, but from that single moment on, vicious Min-chul turned all his attention directly to our main character, making him his primary target for torture. Every single time Min-chul's savage gang would corner Hyun-sung and beat him down, never letting him catch his breath. This torture became a daily routine, and the young man could no longer sleep at night. It was a real 24-hour hell. Now everyone in the classroom froze, waiting to see what would happen next. The girls were terrified, bracing for the absolute worst. Min-chul was caught off guard, stunned by Hyun-sung's sheer audacity, but before he could do a single thing, his classmate's hand aggressively grabbed him by the hair. Min-chul was so stunned he did not even defend himself. A split second later, his face was smashed face first onto the wooden desk with terrifying, brutal, bone-crushing force. Blood spattered everywhere, and shocked whispers filled the room. The other classmates had no clue what had happened between the two of them. After all, Min-chul was a brute who relied solely on raw physical strength. Since he was never the one taking the first hit, the bully was immediately thrown completely off balance. Hyun-sung timed it perfectly. When his opponent tried to recover from that heavy blow, he grabbed him by the hair again and slammed him violently against the desk. Hyun Sung had been waiting 10 whole years, and now he was finally executing his cold payback exactly as he had planned. The next moment, the bully was crashing down to the floor. Time for the next step. Hyun Sung pinned Mincheol's face to the tiles with his shoe. He did not want to think about any consequences. Honestly, he did not care if his enemy lived or died. He only knew that if the heavy bastard raised his head, he would get crushed again. If he blocked with his hand, he would lose that hand. Right in that moment, a heavy school chair came flying across the room, thrown by one of Mincheol's lackeys, desperate to stop the absolute beatdown. Hyun Sung looked up from his victim, staring cold at the lackeys, warning them he did not ever plan on stopping. Minho tried to size up the situation, realizing Hyun Sung was completely unfazed, even if the entire gang jumped in to save their leader. The punks were deeply shaken by the terrifying fact that the young man showed absolutely zero fear at all. By now, Mincheol's entire crew had crowded inside the classroom, ready to back up their beaten comrade. The absolute undisputed muscle of this entire group was the absolute titan, Changseok, who immediately promised to break the brat in half. The two stood glaring eye to eye, the outcome dead uncertain, leaving the girls. Someone ran into the classroom, shouting that the teacher was coming. The bullies backed off to avoid immediate trouble, planning to settle things later. Park Mincheol leaned in close, whispering that they would definitely settle this right after class, since the class president was finished either way. But Kim Hyun-seong replied he couldn't wait for that moment, hoping the punks wouldn't try to run away. Soon the lesson began. Park Mincheol still couldn't wrap his head around what happened. His head was pounding with a split end, and fury consumed him. He remembered only that first blow before waking up flat on the floor. It was an absolute humiliation he couldn't ignore. There was no way he would let this slide. Park Mincheol planned to gather his crew after school and violently settle the score with this quiet wimp. Park Mincheol convinced himself that the loser only got lucky because he had dropped his guard. Now this quiet kid was acting tough. Before today, Park Mincheol hadn't even targeted him. Kim Hyun-seong was the class president, handling responsibilities in silence. The two had simply avoided each other, but now everything had completely changed. The class president had crossed the line first, and he was going to pay. They would beat him half to death. Meanwhile, the teacher continued explaining that this specific topic would be on the exam, but the boys only focused on one thing: how to slip out early. Soon, the entire classroom became completely consumed with thoughts of Kim Hyun-seong. His bizarre behavior today was completely out of character, leaving everyone wondering if he was on drugs. Many believed Kim Hyun-seong had simply lost his mind, praying that no major trouble would break out. Meanwhile, the gang of bullies quietly plotted revenge, aiming to be the first to completely crush Kim Hyun-seong. None of them cared about the actual reason behind why their quiet class president had suddenly snapped and lost his temper. Jung Minho assumed the guy was just trying to act tough before the crowd. If they left him unpunished, the rest of the school would look down on their group. The bullies had to beat him to a complete pulp. That way he would never dare glare at them again. Their rage boiled. They were itching to tear their insolent classmate to actual shreds. As soon as the bell finally rang and the teacher walked out, Park Mincheol leaped up from his desk, shouting that Kim Hyun-seong was dead meat. But a split second later, a devastating strike to the head knocked the bully completely off his feet. Confusion filled the room. Kim Hyun-seong grabbed his opponent by the hair, ready to finish what he started. Park Mincheol realized his classmate had no plans of running away. Instead, he had been waiting for the entire group to arrive purely to continue the beatdown. The bully's friends hoped that Kim Hyun-seong couldn't escape, since the school was entirely closed off with zero places to hide. Having barely endured the boring class, they were now desperate to avenge their friend and tear Kim Hyun-seong apart. But as the group rushed out into the hallway, they noticed other students staring In absolute shock and horror, the bullies shoved their way forward. Pushing through the crowd, terrified screams echoed from inside the room where Park Min-cheol studied. When they burst inside, they found their friend lying motionless. Their Kim Hyun-seong, looking completely unhinged, was already raising his bloodied fist to strike again. He clearly had no intention of stopping. Instead of running, Hyun glanced over and told them they were running late. Chang-suk immediately charged with a deafening roar. He was the absolute biggest threat in the entire gang. Hyun had replayed this exact scenario in his head for 10 years. Handling Minyu would actually be quite easy now. But defeating Chang-suk required a different approach because the bully was dangerously fast and strong. Hyun decided to resort to brutal tactics he never used before. He grabbed a heavy padlock hanging from a nearby locker and rammed it directly into the guy's temple. He knew playing fair would never get him revenge. To win a real fight, you cannot afford to hesitate or show any mercy. It did not matter how much his muscular opponent had actually trained his body. No skull can withstand cold steel to a vital spot. Chang-suk was instantly completely paralyzed by the pain. Then came Hyun's brutal right hook. He was not done yet. Hyun grabbed Yonta by the waist and slammed him down onto the hard concrete floor with every single ounce of his inner strength. He threw his weight onto the boy, pinning him flat against the hallway floor so Yonta could not possibly block the vicious punches that were about to rain down. Normally, Minyu would have jumped in to attack from behind, but Hyun needed to break Yonta first. To win against their superior numbers, split-second speed was everything. He had to strike fast, leaving no room to breathe. A few savage seconds later, another bully lay broken. The kid did not even have time to fully comprehend what had just actually happened to him. Hyun had visualized this fight 1,000 times, but his body could not quite keep up. His energy was rapidly dropping fast, but he refused to quit. He had to see this through. There was still one final person left to punish. Minyu stared in pure, paralyzed horror at the absolute monster standing before him. This quiet kid had just destroyed his entire crew in seconds. How had Hyun hidden this terrifying strength from everyone around him for all these years? Minyu realized with terror that he was now completely alone. Drenched in cold sweat, he quietly awaited his impending doom. Hyun slowly turned to him and calmly said his turn had finally come. Minyu's hands shook uncontrollably now. He could not even lift his arms to protect his face. Just then, a loud, angry voice echoed down the hallway. A teacher demanded to know what was happening in the corridor. Minyu immediately realized this was his lucky break. Because a massive crowd was now gathering, the crazy commotion had finally caught the faculty's attention. Everyone stared in absolute horror at the bloody bodies scattered all over the floor. The entire situation looked extremely bad to the administration, but Hyun still managed to lean in and whisper a final warning to Minyu, promising that his turn would definitely be next. The teacher was absolutely furious. He yelled that Hyun had lost his mind, sending 3 classmates directly to the hospital with bloodied faces. The teacher knew the situation was critical. To avoid being accused of negligence, the staff had to make Hyun take the entire blame, especially since the boy had always been quiet. The teacher angrily declared that this violent incident would get him expelled. This mess could not be handled at the school level. For 10 long years, absolutely nothing like this had ever happened. No student committed such a brutal assault. The teacher warned Hyun-seong that the victim's parents would not let this go. He would pay, but Hyun-seong told him to stop blowing things out of proportion. This was not his first experience with school violence. Staring Kim Yun-shul down, Hyun-seong told him to handle it. Just handle it the usual way, since the teacher was so incredibly great at burying problems. No need to make a massive scene. It just needed to be forgotten. Hyun-seong wanted a quick and silent cover-up. The teacher was stunned. No educator could bear such sheer insolence from a student. Furious, Kim Yunshul lost his temper and slapped Hyun Seong hard across the face. Watching this complete chaos, it was easy to see how Kim Hyun Seong died before. He was subjected to years of endless, systematic school bullying. The issue was not just the vicious thugs who beat up kids. A massive problem was the total indifference of teachers who watched. Bribe envelopes were passed around, and every bad situation was quickly swept away. These people were not educators, they only pretended to care. They never tried to be real mentors. Hyun Seong simply rubbed his red cheek. He warned the teacher to stop now, or things would get very ugly. He bluntly told Kim Yunshul to shut up, threatening to expose the bribe money. He knew all about the cash parents brought in, and more. He knew about the teacher's cozy relationship with John Minho's wealthy family. But that was nothing compared to the other dark secrets he held. The young man dropped hints about a scandal involving the English teacher. This information terrified Kim Yunshul. He realized he was totally trapped. Hyun Seong repeated once more that this was exactly why the man must back off. After years of constant torment, Hyun Seong had made a desperate choice back then. He had needed an adult's help, so he turned to Kim Yunshul. But Kim Yunshul never stood up for the weak. Park Min-cheol lied and claimed he would never bully anyone, calling it a misunderstanding. The teacher just gave a weak warning not to fight. He said that hitting classmates never makes anyone feel any better. But that useless speech changed nothing. In the end, the abuse kept going. The weaker students were still targeted, while the teacher did absolutely nothing. When the thugs realized Kim Hyun Seong was trying to get help, they became even more aggressive, desperate to punish him for snitching. After that, Hyun Seong took even worse beatings, left completely abandoned. He finally realized that no teacher would ever step in to protect him. A burning sense of injustice and anger filled the helpless boy. Real educators should at least investigate when a student begs for help. But Kim Yunshul had zero interest in confronting those rich delinquents. He actively ignored the violence taking place right before his eyes. Then came the day the thugs were brutally thrashing Hyun Seong. The teacher saw the whole thing directly through the classroom window. The desperate boy hoped Kim Yunshul would finally save him, but only later did the boy find out his teacher was a total scumbag who took bribes, pocketing cash from desperate parents with zero intention of actually helping them. A way to change everything. Kim Hyun Seong was ready, even if he had to fight completely alone. He knew the odds were terrible, but Hyun Seong wanted to escape this living hell. That day he crossed the line. The next morning, the entire school was buzzing with gossip. Furious parents demanded to know who dared to beat and disfigure their precious son. How could anyone? Young Minho pointed fingers, claiming Hyun Seong started the fight. Minho blamed him completely, while his angry mother screamed at the teachers. She sobbed, his nose was broken, and she swore she would not let this go. A meeting was called. His poor grandmother had to bow in deep shame, apologizing for his behavior, yet even at this school violence hearing, only Hyun Seong was punished, while Minho's gang walked away scot-free. The dark truth only became clear after Hyun Seong fell into a coma. He could never get revenge alone. He needed to be much smarter. He had to punish the corrupt teachers and everyone else involved. Only then would his vengeance be complete. Teacher Kim tried to dismiss him, calling his warnings total nonsense, but Hyun Seong refused to back down. He was locked onto his goal, having prepared for 10 long years. Hyun Seong tilted his head. He stared right at his trembling teacher. He whispered that the man had better watch how he spoke to him. The boy revealed how Mr. Kim met Minho's wealthy parents through alumni. He had been helping the bully even before he enrolled at the school. That secret favor earned him a fat monthly payment, but there was more. Mr. Kim was also sleeping with the English teacher, a married mother of 3. They met at cheap motels. If this dirty secret got out, Mr. Kim's teaching career would be ruined with no way to escape. So he had better stop behaving this way, or his life was over. Hyun-seong warned that he would stop at nothing to destroy him. He wouldn't leave Mr. Kim alone, even if he left the school. He knew the teacher's wife once threw divorce papers in his face. Her family was incredibly wealthy, but everything was in her name alone. Ever since, exposing this secret was the teacher's absolute greatest fear. This blackmail was guaranteed to work on a coward like him. After a few agonizing minutes, Mr. Kim finally asked what he wanted. The young man smiled, saying the price of silence was very simple. If the teacher wanted him to stay quiet, he must keep living normally. In other words, he had to remain the same useless, corrupt scumbag. He had to ignore student problems and cover up dirty secrets. But there was a catch. This special treatment only applied to Hyun-seong. No details about his incidents could ever reach the light of day. If Mr. Kim cooperated, Hyun-seong promised to keep his mouth shut. No one would ever hear a whisper of his secrets until graduation. The teacher listened silently, slowly bowed his head, and agreed to cooperate. Hyun-seong was satisfied. Mr. Kim was only the first pawn in his game. There were many more cards to play, and he had to prepare. But first, there was still some unfinished business left for him. Hun headed straight back to the office to finish what he started. And now he was standing right outside the door. Inside, Young Minyu was furious, completely destroying the classroom and throwing heavy chairs in rage. But the bully still desperately believed Teacher Kim would protect him. And expel Hun for good, Minyu decided he would just avoid him for a while and never have to see him again. To be totally honest, Minyu was absolutely terrified of this quiet class president who had somehow become so strong. He decided that he needed to become the absolute top dog so Hun could never take his power away. After kicking one last chair across the room, Minyu sat down and exhaled, confident that the problem was finally solved. He figured the brutal beating of his friends was just a fluke since Hun could never take all three of them at once, but then the classroom door swung open. Hun stepped inside, calling Minyu's name. The bully froze, pretending not to hear, but Hun told him they were far from finished. A devastating punch immediately knocked Minyu off his feet, crashing backward. And trust me, Hun was clearly determined to absolutely destroy the last standing gang member. He unleashed a brutal barrage of blows until the bully was crying, desperately begging for mercy. Minyu watched his classmate beating him and was certain the guy had completely lost his mind. The entire class watched in horror while Teacher Kim just stood by, silently showing no reaction, even though the corrupt teacher received money from Minyu's parents every single month. Hun continued to strike the boy and told him not to expect any help since absolutely nobody in this school cared about him. Hun landed a few more devastating blows with absolutely all his might, declaring that nobody cared. Just 5 minutes before this crazy scene, Teacher Kim was sitting in the lounge, panicking over how to handle the situation. He knew there was almost no chance of resolving this quietly, especially with 3 students already sent to the hospital. Obviously, the administration would prefer to sweep this under the rug, but if Hun goes unpunished, the parents are going to be furious, especially Minyu's family. They are not going to stand idly by. They are powerfully influential people who own several massive buildings. They practically funded the school's repairs out of their own pockets. So the principal would protect them at all costs, but the worst part was that Teacher Kim was also taking money from them. If this incident gets out to the public, the teacher is completely ruined. He had to think as fast as possible. The teacher decided his best option right now was to separate Minyu from his friends since the boy had not been touched yet. As long as Minyu stayed safe, his wealthy parents would not make a scene. They could pretend only his troublemaker friends got hurt, which meant he needed to act immediately. We need to warn Kim Hyun-seong right away. Teacher Kim decided to confront the boy directly. He wanted to ensure he stayed far away from Minyu, avoiding any massive trouble. The teacher rushed to find the students immediately to settle this ugly matter. Leaving the staff room behind, he marched straight toward the classroom, but right then, inside that room, young Minyu could barely stand. He was taking a brutal beating. His classmate was ruthlessly thrashing him. The boy's sole hope lay with the teacher. He desperately prayed for protection, but the teacher realized he was already too late. There was absolutely nothing left to do. Worse, he decided he did not care. He ignored Minyu's wealthy, powerful parents because his own dark secret was at stake. If his secret affair with the English teacher leaked, his career would be ruined. So Teacher Kim turned his back on the room, pretending he saw absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, Kim Hyun-seong kept slamming the bully who used to mock him constantly. This arrogant tyrant turned out to be nothing but a pathetic, sniveling coward. Kim Hyun-seong had always been told that his own weakness caused the endless bullying. They insulted him daily, treated him like garbage, and beat him without hesitation. They believed being stronger gave them that right, but now the tables had turned. Finally, Kim Hyun-seong was about to unleash absolute hell on his tormentors. Now the final member of this rotten gang got exactly what he deserved. Kim Hyun-seong knew that if he spared Minyu, things might get swept away. The school would have easily swept the gang's violence right under the rug. But Kim Hyun-seong refused to halt his ruthless campaign just to protect someone. Instead, he immediately turned around and started absolutely crushing Mincheol. Sure, he could have played it safe and avoided the bullies entirely. But after 3 hellish years of endless beatings, his mind was made up. A burning, unstoppable desire for pure revenge was now his only driving force. Looking down at the bloodied, limp body, Kim Hyun-seong knew trouble was coming. Having broken 4 bullies with his bare hands, things were about to get chaotic. The obsessed principal would definitely try to destroy him to protect the school's image. He would throw the absolute limit of the law at Kim Hyun-seong. Too many students saw the beatings, making a quiet cover-up impossible now. So Kim Hyun-seong had to find a completely different way to control them. If he could not rule this school, his grand plan was dead. This was merely step 1 of a massive, bloody road stretching ahead. A strategy he perfected while trapped in a cold coma for 10 long years. Soon, the furious school principal gathered the teachers for an emergency meeting. He declared that Kim Hyun-seong's violent rampage had crossed every line. The boy showed zero remorse and went on to brutalize yet another victim. The sheer violence of his actions left Principal Oh Dhwan deeply shaken. He lamented that their prestigious school was looking like some cheap gangster movie. The teachers quickly agreed that Kim Hyun-seong's actions required the ultimate punishment. They wanted the ruthless student to pay dearly for his crimes. Lee Min-young, the English teacher, strongly backed the principal's harsh stance. Such extreme violence had absolutely no place on school grounds, she argued. She demanded immediate expulsion to set an example for other students. The faculty had to show they would never tolerate this. Teacher Kim listened. He tried to distract the English teacher, completely unaware that her reckless suggestions would cause them massive trouble if Lee Min-young wants to keep her secrets safe and prevent anyone from discovering her secret relationship with Teacher Kim. She must protect the boy. Otherwise, his expulsion will drag their forbidden affair right into the open. Teacher Kim agreed that Kim Hyun-seong made a mistake, but as his homeroom teacher, he argued that the entire clash was actually started by Park Min-kal and his gang. The principal was completely lost, unable to follow his logic. But rumors about Park Min-kal's gang bullying other students had been quietly circulating. Teacher Kim admitted he had been keeping a very close eye on them. He wanted to discipline them, but unfortunately, Kim Hyun-seong couldn't stand by. Seeing the abuse, he snapped, According to the homeroom teacher, the boy was primarily a victim in all of this, and only secondarily a troublemaker. Punishing only Kim Hyun-shang would be both unprofessional and completely unfair. But the principal was absolutely unyielding, insisting on immediate action. A heated argument quickly erupted between the two men right in the meeting room. The principal stated flatly that Yang Minu's highly influential parents would never let this slide, so they needed to deal with the instigator to avoid their anger. We cannot afford to lose ties with such powerful, wealthy families. Keeping those connections is the only way to make our school truly prestigious. The principal announced a parent committee meeting would take place in 1 week, where they would collectively decide on the final disciplinary actions. Until then, silence. The principal demanded absolute secrecy from everyone. He also declared that student Kim Hyun-shang was suspended immediately. The boy must reflect on his actions at home until the committee meets. In exactly 1 week, he must return to school with his legal guardian. Kim Hyun-shang stood up, thanked the principal, and walked out quietly. He was barely down the hallway when his homeroom teacher came running after him. The man quickly made excuses, claiming he did everything he possibly could. But since Kim Hyun-shang attacked Yang Minu, things were going to be extremely difficult. The teacher urged him to stay quiet and avoid drawing any more attention. If things stayed calm, he promised he would try to resolve the entire mess. Kim Hyun-shang stared at him, marveling at what an interesting hypocrite he was. After all, just a couple of days ago, this same man was violently abusing students. He had lost any trace of a moral conscience, proving he was absolute trash. But right now, he was a highly useful tool to execute his revenge. Kim Hyun-shang turned slowly to the pathetic teacher with a cold, piercing look. He said he appreciated how hard Kim Yun-shul had tried at the meeting. But despite those lies, the teacher knew the truth about Park Mengkal's gang. If the homeroom teacher wanted to save his career, he had only one clear path to keep his job. He had to keep a critical promise. He must protect Kim Hyun-shang and keep him happy until graduation. Because if he fails, Kim Hyun-shang made a terrifying promise to the teacher. He would completely ruin his life, along with the English teacher's secret career. Looking at the trembling coward before him, the boy gave a final, harsh warning. He always keeps his word, and he expects the exact same in return. Yunsha quickly realized that arguing with this student was totally pointless. Something had changed in him, making words alone powerful enough without any proof. Honestly, Hun Seong wanted nothing more than to get rid of his teacher. But unfortunately for him, his ultimate goal was still a very long way off. And trust me, he knew better than to throw away a valuable card over rage. The homeroom teacher, Kim Yong-chul, could still prove useful, at least for now. He just needed him until his own position at the school became fully secure. Sure, Mr. Kim was just a teacher, but desperation would make him do anything. Desperate to survive, Hun Seong grabbed his school backpack under the silent, heavy stairs. He walked right out of the school, planning to return in exactly 1 week. That was when he would execute the master plan he had spent years designing. Once his plan succeeded, Principal Adwin would not be caring for his plants so peacefully. The principal was about to face massive problems he could never have possibly imagined. And just like that, Hun Seong unexpectedly found himself with some rare free time. He could finally visit his favorite old spots after being away for so long. He still lived in a rundown old house, but that was hardly the worst part. Thanks to his late parents' life insurance, at least he did not have to pay rent. But then his grandmother dropped a bombshell and told him she had sold the apartment. She had to pay off piling hospital bills, and that was when Hun Seong felt shattered. His entire world crumbled. He once hated that dump, but now he was just grateful. He was just happy to have a roof over his head, opening the front door. He stepped inside the quiet apartment and called out for his grandmother. Looking around, he remembered she would usually be working at this hour. She had sacrificed everything for their family, making his return a literal miracle. Hun Seong was deeply grateful to have been granted another chance in this world. He had to secure sweet revenge while building a safe future for his family. He wanted his grandmother and brother to have a peaceful, stable place to live. With 1 week left before the parent-teacher conference, he went into his room. He grabbed some paper to write down the clear strategy forming in his head. Within 2 years, he needed to lock down the neighborhood and build a base. To pull this off, 3 strict conditions had to be met first. Number 1 was personal strength. He needed to overpower all the school bullies. He had to ensure those punks stood zero chance against him in a fight. Next, he had to equal a legendary star athlete. Winning him over would make things a whole lot easier. Second point, opponents tend to group up. So he needed to build his own crew of loyal fighters. But he was still just a regular high school kid. Let's be real, the most perfect plan is useless without the strength to back it up. Hun Seong focused on the execution, knowing he must find the right people. He had to build a strong network. Then came the final, third point. This part was all about using his future memories, which he called influence. Having that power meant nothing would stand in his way. It would also come in clutch when dealing with the parent-teacher association. Just then, loud shouting echoed from right outside the house. It was a typical chaotic day at the precinct. A furious young man was screaming at the officers, bragging that they had no idea who his family was. It was unbelievable to him that they did not even recognize their own city's wealthy elite. The stressed officers tried desperately to calm down the raging heir, who was obviously some local tycoon's spoiled kid, acting arrogant and disrespectful. In reality, he was the eldest son of Ko Chungbong, the powerful owner of Mongshin Construction. Despite being well past his teenage years, he still had not learned to behave with any real dignity at 35 years old. He was furious, kicking chairs all over the precinct. Of course, the local police knew exactly who they were dealing with. He was a notorious loose cannon in Dasan who could easily make their lives miserable. Lately, he had tried to lay low because the cutthroat inheritance battle had officially started. Still, the officers had to follow protocol and were currently writing up another official report on this spoiled brat, realizing the cops had no other option. Ko Changbum knew staying put was better than fleeing from them. Ko Changbum carefully reread the document, and the situation looked terrible. If he were officially charged, his younger brother would gain the upper hand. Deep down, he knew he was completely in the wrong for throwing the first punch. Now, he had to choose the lesser of two evils. Things were incredibly stressful, especially since his wealthy father had just announced a competitive trial between his potential heirs to finally decide who was worthy of inheriting the entire business empire. The patriarch faced a tough choice. Who should get the throne? The eldest son who only managed to graduate from a basic high school, or the brilliant younger brother with an elite university degree? He even married into power, securing his succession. The police officer on duty actually felt slightly bad for Ko Changbum, but there was absolutely nothing he could do since the blame clearly rested on the arrogant heir. The cops could not just release him after he violently beat up innocent civilians. Ko Changbum tried desperately to justify his actions, claiming he was not the one who started the brawl. Unfortunately, he had absolutely no evidence. There were no security cameras nearby, making it impossible to disprove the victims' damning statements. Ko Changbum had zero clues on how to spin this mess in his favor. Suddenly, his eyes locked onto a high school student who, strangely, was also waiting at the precinct. The young kid suddenly raised his hand, pointed right at Ko Changbum, and announced that he wanted to testify in the man's defense. The officers were deeply confused. But everything clicked when the teen pulled out his tablet and showed them a video. The raw footage clearly proved that a gang of thugs had ambushed Ko Changbum. It was obvious they cornered him and purposely provoked a fight. the teenager explained too. The cops he was just passing by witnessed the trap and knew there would be trouble. Since there were no surveillance cameras around, thinking fast, he approached a driver. Parked nearby and got the dashcam footage. He knew his own word as a minor would not carry much weight, but now the police had undeniable visual proof. Unfolding right before their eyes, according to the witness, Ko Changbum tried hard to avoid a confrontation, but the thugs aggressively closed in and struck first. The heir had zero options but to defend himself. The boy argued that the rich heir was definitely not to blame just because he was strong enough to drop them with one punch. The teen was absolutely certain it was textbook self-defense. Overjoyed, Ko Changbum hugged the officer praised the student, calling him a real hero for standing his ground and speaking out. Changbam silently recalled his father's words, reminding him to only strike those who truly deserve it. But now that they had solid evidence, the looming trial might not even happen. With the video reviewed, the investigator was finally ready to shut down the case. The officer explained that once the unconscious attackers finally woke up in the hospital, he would bring Ko Changbam back to the station just to finalize some paperwork. Then the officer bowed his head, apologizing deeply to Changbam for everything. The officer admitted he should have paid closer attention instead of jumping to conclusions. He only assumed guilt because the thugs ended up completely hospitalized. Changbam stepped close, whispering that he did not care about the apology. None of those empty excuses mattered to him, but one thing was absolutely certain. He had permanently memorized the officer's face and planned to make his life living hell. Soon, the wealthy heir and the quiet high schooler walked out of the station. Changbam pulled the boy into a tight hug, thanking him for saving his life. He made it clear that he never, ever forgets a debt of gratitude. Looking the teenager dead in the eye, he told him to remember that forever. The rich man pulled out a thick envelope stuffed with cash as a reward. Without a single second of hesitation, Yunxiang snatched the money and pocketed it. Most high school kids would freeze at that kind of cash, but not him. Changbam stared, deeply intrigued by this bizarre high schooler who possessed the dashcam footage. This kid was clearly running a much deeper game than he let on. Suddenly, Yunxiang turned around and asked if Changbam truly believed this was an accident. With the older man looking completely lost, Yunxiang spoke plainly. He admitted he knew exactly what kind of powerful man he was dealing with. Changbam was currently locked in a brutal war for the massive family inheritance. His opponent was none other than his own younger brother, Ko Changxiak. Hearing this, Changbam realized the street ambush was likely a calculated hit. Someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, treating him like a mere puppet. The teenager insisted that absolutely nothing about tonight was a random coincidence. He claimed to hold hard evidence, instantly capturing the wealthy heir's full attention. Since Yunxiang had spent 10 agonizing years in a coma, he had plenty of time. He spent a decade listening to news reports about the wealthy and famous Ko family. Famous across Decen, the teenager knew every dirty secret regarding Changbam's life. Yunxiang looked at him and asked for just 1 hour of his time. If the man was truly grateful, 1 single hour was a very cheap price. He promised it would be painless, yet it would change his entire life forever. They walked into a nearby quiet cafe, sliding into a corner booth to talk. Yunxiang pulled out his phone and queued up the unedited dashcam footage. He explained that the final few seconds were all they needed for self-defense. The police only saw the end, but the beginning held the real trap. He pressed play, ready to expose the truth of how this trap was set. Changbam watched the screen as the video showed 30 minutes before the ambush. 3 suspicious men approached the 24-hour convenience store, acting like normal customers. But instead of shopping, they loitered in the exact same spot for ages. It was dead obvious they were staking the place out, waiting for their target. When Go Changbam stepped inside, they immediately started shoving, making a scene. Pushing each other and sticking their faces out, practically begging to get hit. Go Changbam tried to de-escalate, but they hit first, if Mr. Go thinks back. All the bizarre things happening to him lately feel incredibly suspicious. It is as if some hidden mastermind is pulling the strings, and it all started right after the battle for the family succession was declared. From that moment, everything went downhill for Go Changbam. Mr. Go must have wondered if someone wants him gone. Is it all just bad luck or a calculated trap? The older brother falls silent, consumed by deep worry as the pieces connect. Still, he cannot believe his own brother, who always had the absolute best, would ever resort to such filthy schemes. Go Changbam turns to the high schooler, demanding to know why he is revealing all of this. Hyeonseong knows that currently, Myeongjin Construction is just a small local company, but their future is massive. Because of an upcoming wave of heavy funding and advanced technology, their father has always lived by one strict rule: never damage other people's businesses. By cutting profit margins and rapidly finishing high-quality projects, he will build an empire, placing his company among the absolute biggest players in the nation. Yet right at the peak of this monumental rise, both sons get ruthlessly kicked out of the company. It all starts when Go Changbam is falsely accused of brutal assault, causing a massive public scandal that the entire city gossips about. Meanwhile, the corrupt younger brother schemes in the shadows, desperate to win inheritance. When Go Changbam discovers his younger brother's schemes, his temper explodes and he beats him. The brutal beating leaves the younger sibling permanently disabled, throwing their father into an absolute rage as he disqualifies both sons from ever taking over the company. The family drama explodes online, triggering an unbelievable storm of public attention and mockery. Internet users start stalking the brothers, uploading their daily failures for memes. In the end, the prestigious role of company president is handed over to an outside professional manager, helping Myeongjin Construction rise to a massive global corporation. Hyeonseong knows very well that the business thrives best without the greedy brothers. Honestly, it would be much smarter for him to stay out of it. The eldest son is incompetent and hot-headed, but not truly a monster. The younger son, however, is a ruthless sociopath who will step over anyone to win. Yet Kim Hyeonseong does not care about the fate of their family empire. All that truly matters to him is how he can leverage their greed. He has no real guarantee that altering the past is the right choice, especially since the butterfly effect might completely derail his original timeline. But that is not his concern. Even if the future collapses, Hyeonseong only wants to destroy his enemies and protect his loved ones, so he makes his move, offering to guide Go Changbam so the man can completely dismantle his younger brother and secure his place as the rightful head of Myeongjin Construction. Naturally, this sounds completely ridiculous to the older brother. How could a mere kid offer any real support, especially when elite professionals are already backing him? The kid cannot deny their influence, but then look at the cold, hard facts. Those expensive elites are just sweet-talking Mr. Go, while a random high schooler has quietly uncovered his own brother's deep-rooted conspiracy against him. Something everyone was keeping quiet about. This made perfect sense because these allies were constantly changing. He simply wanted to be taken at his word only, asking for a chance to build a real relationship based on mutual trust. Jangbum stepped out of the cafe onto the street to smoke and ponder the offer. He felt like his head was ready to explode. Right then, a cafe employee ran out and warned him that smoking was strictly banned here, but in response, the stubborn Jangbum yelled at the worker to back off and get lost inside, or he would smash the entire window right then and there. Hun silently watched this reckless man, born as the eldest son of a wealthy family who had lived a life of luxury. He was known throughout the entire city as a ticking time bomb, but on the other hand, Hun was not looking for righteous people at all. On the contrary, it would be far easier to work with a rotten man willing to destroy his own brother for The sake of power, Jangbum thought about his younger brother, who truly knew no bounds and always used dirty tactics. The man realized this high schooler was right compared to his younger brother. Jangbum was a nobody who could easily lose his spot as the heir at any moment. Still, he was not sure if it was smart to trust a high school boy he had just met for the very first time. In his life, his father once told him that if he lacked skills, he should surround himself with highly capable people. Never look at gender, age, or background, just seek out the right people, and then he would easily manage to run a massive company and solve any major problem. Jangbum still had not decided what to do. He walked back inside and asked the student what his plan was. Jangbum wanted to hear the full plan before making a final decision. Meanwhile, in his office, Chung-suk was practically tearing his hair out in pure rage. He threw his phone in anger because his useless idiots could not handle a simple job. All because of his stubborn, dim-witted father and those damn old-fashioned principles. That was why his useless older brother even stood a chance at the inheritance, though he was not a worthy competitor at all. Chung-suk finally calmed himself down. He had the upper hand anyway, and if nothing changed, the title was his. Right then his phone rang with a frantic report that they were facing major problems. The crux of the issue was that Chung-suk's wife had just stormed into the Hanung office. Hun pointed out that to win this battle, they had to face reality. Of the two brothers, who was actually better suited for the director position? It was completely obvious to everyone that it was Chung-suk. The older brother had only finished high school, making him no match for a prestigious business school student. University. On top of that, the ambitious young man married a girl from an extremely influential family right after returning to Korea, and then suggested that the true heir should be chosen through fair competition. None of this was a coincidence. From the very beginning, Chung-suk had worked tirelessly to steal his brother's birthright, securing a rock-solid position for himself. Apart from being the older brother, Jangbum had no real advantages whatsoever. What is more, he was constantly causing trouble and getting into fights, so absolutely no one would want to support him voluntarily. Jangbum listened intently to the young guy, agreeing with every word. Hun said that even this desperate situation, Jangbum still had a chance of winning, despite the younger. The director still decided to hold this competition. He naively believed his eldest son actually wanted the crown. That is the only reason they fight. But even if the younger brother outclasses him completely, the stubborn director refuses to call it off. The director will definitely pick one of them, no matter what. Just imagine this wild scenario. What if the perfect golden boy fails to deliver? What if he slips? What if he crashes and burns, landing right next to Chung-bom? We have to prepare for that. If both brothers hit rock bottom, who does the old man choose then? That is the real starting line. This is where things get interesting, with both brothers on equal ground. Suddenly, being the eldest son becomes Chung-bom's ultimate weapon. Meanwhile, Changguk rushes to his lover's apartment and finds his wife thrashing the beauty. Hun continues detailing his master plan. They only need to meet 3 conditions. Just 3 steps to completely defeat their younger brother. First is influence. Sadly, Chung-bom is lagging way behind. Chung-suk has already secured a prestigious marriage, while the eldest was still wasting away in trashy clubs. The second point is reputation, and that is another brutal hurdle, since that wild younger brother, Dan, is famous throughout the city. Finally, there is the matter of skills. While Chung-bom was busy drinking and chasing girls, his younger brother was grinding hard, sharpening his skills. The gap between the brothers is simply massive. Chung-suk won't even need to break a sweat to win this. A tiny display of capability wins it, but watch closely, here is the real turn. They will dismantle his advantages one by one, starting right now. Step 1 is figuring out how to beat Chung-suk in social influence. Marrying an elite girl is completely impossible now. Since no elite families exist in their circles, they must think outside the box. They need to force the younger brother into a messy, public divorce. That instantly neutralizes his status, dragging Chang Suk back to square one. Hyan is absolutely confident they can weaken him and kill his momentum. This stops him from outshining them ever again. Meanwhile, director Ko Ming-jin summons both brothers. Now the younger one is desperately begging for forgiveness. Their father stares back at them, a deep sense of disgust rising. Pure disappointment fills his soul. Wang Jin admits he already spoke with the father-in-law, promising to punish Chang Suk to prevent any divorce. The desperate patriarch literally had to beg them for one more chance. For now, the father-in-law demands that Chang Suk's wife live separately, to observe her husband from a distance before making any final decisions. Chang Suk tries to apologize, but his father is absolutely furious. He previously warned his son that married men must strictly keep their private lives completely clean. If Chang Suk still wants to chase other women, he should remain single. Just like his older brother, the old man is beyond livid now. He cannot fathom how both of his sons turned out so incredibly stupid. Turning to Chung Bom, he demands to know what he was doing. At the police station recently, the old man fully expects an explosive reaction. To prove his innocence, Changbum was absolutely thrilled with the high schooler's plan. The plan was simple: dig up some major dirt on his younger brother. Then expose everything to their father, proving that Changseok was bringing utter shame to their family. He would show that the massive company should never be handed to someone like him. Surely their father would kick him out, but Hyun warned that this was a terrible idea. See, back when Hyun was lying in a coma, he had listened to a fascinating documentary. It was all about the ruthless empire built by the company's brilliant CEO, Kyung-jin. The show revealed the old man knew exactly what his sons were doing. That included the younger brother's underhanded tricks to permanently replace his older brother. Yet the father never reacted because deep down he just did not care. A slightly tarnished reputation was never a deal-breaker for his chosen heir. All he cared about was whether his successor had the grit to lead the company. Because of that, some petty scandals would never be enough to sway his mind. If they pushed too hard, Kyung-jin would simply find a professional manager instead. He would pass the family business to an outsider, exactly like in the past life. So simply taking down Changseok was not going to cut it to win the crown. The eldest son had to prove he was truly worthy of being the future CEO. They had to reveal a completely different, mature side of Changbum, so Hyun explained that they must present him in a brand new light, shocking everyone who doubted him. That was the ultimate plan, now standing right in front of his father and brother. Changbum lowered his head, humbly pleading for forgiveness for his past actions. He promised to do whatever it took to make sure this never happened again. Bowing deeply, he admitted that regardless of the reason, he had brought trouble to his father. As the eldest son, he was ready to step up and take full responsibility. His goal was to carry himself with dignity and counsel his brother on their father's behalf. The entire office fell completely dead silent. Nobody in the room saw this coming. The old man spoke up, revealing he already knew what went down at the precinct. He knew his eldest son had been deliberately pushed into a corner. Gently, the father placed a heavy hand on his son's trembling shoulder. Changbum had shown real restraint, resolving the conflict without any dirty brawling. The CEO looked straight into his son's eyes, doing something he had not done in years. He softly admitted he was proud of Changbum. Hearing this, Changseok nearly lost his mind. Gritting his teeth, he viewed this entire emotional scene as a pathetic clown show. With eyes full of venom, he glared at the brother who had escaped his trap. Still, Changseok remained totally confident that his superior intellect would crush his brother next time. He would easily lure his brother into a deadlier trap. Meanwhile, gang leader Jangsik was absolutely furious, wanting to tear apart whoever leaked info about his hired thugs. Those street punks were his cover, and now Changbum could barely believe his ears. It had been an eternity since his father last told him he was proud of him. Overwhelmed with emotion, the eldest son felt the weight of years of strict parenting melt away. He felt just like a 10-year-old boy who had finally earned his great father's praise. As the meeting wrapped up and everyone left, the eldest son stood frozen in place. His mind was racing, completely overwhelmed by the sudden validation he had just received. He kept replaying his father's gentle words and that reassuring touch on his shoulder. In that very moment, he vowed to make moments like this a regular occurrence. He would do his absolute best to make that happen. Late that evening, Changbum met with the young schoolboy. Thanks to Hyun, he had finally earned his own father's approval and now wanted to hear everything Changbum needed to know. What to do next to secure the director position. He promised to follow every instruction. Hyun immediately warned him not to let his guard down because Chang-suk was still on equal footing with them. When it came to raw influence, to outmaneuver him for the director's seat, they needed a solid lead in two other areas. Hyun had a few key suggestions, but this would prove tough for Changbum. He had to start working at the company and master management. When the time was right, Hyun would guide his next move. Changbum never wanted to be an office drone, but now he was willing to do whatever the boy demanded. Hyun added. There was still one more thing. They only teamed up out of mutual need, and in exchange for this help, Changbum had promised to grant Hyun his wish. The man readily confirmed. He remembered his end of the bargain, wanting to know what he could do for Hyun. Hyun was pleased that his partner had not forgotten their deal, so he laid out his terms clearly. A few days passed and it was time for the big parent-teacher meeting. A furious woman slapped the teacher, shouting. She did not pay him to listen to this nonsense. It was Mrs. Kim, Manyu's wealthy mother. She warned him not to play her for a fool. If he wanted to keep his job, he had to make sure the kid who beat her son was immediately expelled from the school. The terrified homeroom teacher, Mr. Kim, did not dare to argue and promised to make it happen. Left alone, the poor man had no idea how to survive this mess. Suddenly, Hyun appeared right beside him. Hyun warned him it was a terrible move, while the teacher tried to explain he was only trying to minimize the damage. Hyun knew Manyu's mother constantly pressured and manipulated the staff. He told Mr. Kim he should start using his brain for once. After all, the homeroom teacher definitely did not want Hyun to expose his dark little secret. If Hyun went down, he would drag the teacher down with him. Now that is a threat. The man had to choose wisely if he wanted to survive. Mr. Kim watched as the school principal promised Mrs. Kim he would never let her down, since he never had before. Kim Yun-chul was in absolute despair. He realized he would lose his job either way, and his only choice was how people would label him. To the world, he would be known as either a traitor or a bribe taker. He desperately calculated what he could do with his current savings, but right at that moment, the start of the emergency parent-teacher meeting was announced, and all the corrupt school board members and administration took their seats. At the start of the session, Principal O took the floor. He announced that to clear things up, he would hand the floor over to the homeroom teacher of the students involved in the fight. Mr. Kim stood up and declared that everything was completely obvious. The entire incident was solely the fault of Minu and his gang, who had been systematically bullying other classmates. Now, the victim is being falsely accused. This is an absolute outrage. Just before the meeting began, Mr. Kim had quickly verified the records to confirm. He realized this was the exact same guy he had seen at the host club. Go Changbum, the eldest son of the powerful Myeonjin construction empire. He was right there, right in the middle of a parent-teacher meeting. Before things started, Teacher Kim had only glanced at the attendance sheet and dismissed it as a simple coincidence, but now, looking at him, the teacher realized Go Changbum was in a completely different league compared to Minu's average parents. How this powerhouse became Hyun Sung's guardian made no sense, none at all. But for now, he needed to switch sides. Fast, self-preservation kicked in. Nobody else in the room seemed to realize who was actually sitting there. The homeroom teacher repeated it. A terrible misunderstanding had occurred. The real victim and the bully had somehow gotten completely reversed. Principal Othwan frowned, demanding a clear explanation to resolve this. Teacher Kim quickly explained that he had received countless complaints about a notorious gang of 4 classmates terrorizing the school. It was Park Min-chul's gang. They ruthlessly tormented others since day one. He had repeatedly warned them to stop, but as the weeks went by, the abuse only grew worse. Park Min-chul was relentlessly targeting their classmate. Park Min-chul was targeting classmate Lee Jongmin, brutal. And unfortunately, Hyun Sung could no longer stand by. He had to act. The boy tried to resolve things peacefully, reminding them that they should be friends. He pleaded with them from the bottom of his heart to stop. Instead, Park Min-chul brought backup. The heavy threats started immediately. If a group of thugs corners you like that, who wouldn't fight back? It is totally obvious to anyone that Hyun Sung acted in pure self-defense. The same logic applies to the clash with Minyu, since Minyu worked as Min-chul's spy. Hyun Sung had to act quickly to keep himself safe. Sure, the homeroom teacher admitted the kid might have gone a bit too far. But if they ignore the context and only punish Hyun Sung, they are no better than the trash who turn a blind eye to school violence. Teacher Kim bowed politely, finished his speech, and calmly sat back down. The principal sat in utter disbelief at what he had just heard. Teacher Kim seemed to have forgotten the purpose of this meeting. They were here to address Hyun Sung putting multiple classmates in the hospital. A brutal incident that was completely unprecedented in the school's history. Furthermore, the principal claimed there was absolutely no evidence supporting the accusation of general bullying, making it an entirely separate topic. It had absolutely nothing to do with this panel. The principal believed there was never a single valid excuse for such extreme violence, and in his entire career as an educator, he had never once seen students commit such a vicious, cruel act. The stress was actually making his heart ache. Othwan was absolutely convinced that although this entire matter needed a deep investigation, a harsh punishment for Hyun Sung was absolutely essential to prevent copycats. This situation had to serve as a stern warning, and the culprit must face the consequences. Only then could parents who trust this school sleep soundly at night again. With complete peace of mind, the principal suggested letting the first witness take the floor, starting with Minyu so everyone could hear the victim's raw side of the story. His account was everything. Immediately, everyone turned their eyes toward the boy. Prompting Minyu to finally speak, the young man took a breath and started his claim, arguing that Teacher Kim's version was nothing like what actually happened. According to him, he had personally watched Hyun constantly harassing and beating people up. He was always targeting Parkman, and his friends claimed this nightmare went on for years. Ask his classmates, they all saw Hyun suddenly snap and attack out of nowhere, lunging at McCall for absolutely no reason. It was obvious Hyun started the entire mess. To everyone's surprise, Minyu suddenly broke down sobbing, swearing he was telling the truth. He could not just watch his friend get beaten, but then blood everywhere. It was pure terror. A few bystanders desperately tried to pull the monster away. But Hyun would not stop. Poor McCall ended up taking the worst of it. Left black and blue, looking absolutely horrific, no one even had time to think about how the attacker felt. To make matters worse, Minyu pointed out that he had no idea why Teacher Kim was desperately trying to shift the blame onto them. But wait, the drama gets even worse. The teacher had called Hyun into his office to discuss things quietly, but it seemed that their little talk had only fueled Hyun's rage. He stormed right back into class and thrashed Minyu in front of everyone, even though the poor kid had not done a single thing to him. And now sobbing and flooding the principal's office, begging to know if it was really his own fault. Of course, his mother could not stand such a heartbreaking display. She leaped up, holding his chin up, demanding everyone look at her son's bruised face, the face of the child she raised with endless love and gentleness, now completely ruined. She just could not wrap her head around any of this. To her, this was pure, unadulterated savagery happening inside a school. Today it was her son, but who knows who it could be next time. Parents simply cannot ignore this behavior. There must be real consequences. Soon, all the outraged parents and class representatives agreed that demanding immediate punishment was the absolute right thing to do. Instantly, public opinion shifted entirely to Minyu and his furious mother's side. They all wanted Hyan expelled. Meanwhile, right over at the hospital, the three bruised friends were gossiping about the parent-teacher meeting, which was definitely underway. They were all completely sure that Hyan's days at the school were numbered. Everyone knew Manyu's mother's vicious reputation. When it came to her boy, she would burn the place down. And she would not stop until she completely ruined Hyan. The boys laughed, loving the sweet justice since he had trashed them so badly. McCull promised that if the school did not kick their bully out, he would beat him senseless until Hyan begged on his knees to get expelled. Even if Hyan got kicked out today, McCull was going to hunt him down until he got paid. Hearing about cash, his buddies immediately perked right up. They were already planning to squeeze a few $100s out of him. The crew started mapping out how they would spend all that cash, buying a sweet motorcycle and taking pretty girls out for rides. Back at the meeting is interrupted by the loud slam of a fist. Mr. Ko Changbum, Hyan Sung's guardian, declares that everyone here is either talking complete nonsense or genuinely does not understand the problem. The man points his finger at Minyu and states that nobody has even realized this literal demon in human form had started it all. The principal tries to calm the guardian, who is taking liberties by calling a student a demon, but the guardian asks the director what Minyu is if not a demon, adding that he already uncovered everything about this group. It turns out these guys have been attacking others, extorting money and stealing valuables. They are pretty notorious bastards and everyone in the neighborhood knows them. Now, Mr. Ko wants to know why these thugs are being covered up so persistently. Is it the school administration, or are they just unaware, or is bribery involved? This vicious Park Minchial gang simply got what they deserved. Talk about instant karma. Ambulances had to arrive while Hyan Sung was only defending himself. Besides, we must not forget the homeroom teacher's words, confirming the exact same thing, so it is better to figure out what actually caused this conflict. The guardian suggests they be honest with themselves. If back in school some bully was picking on a classmate, would they really just keep quiet and put up with it? Right then, Mrs. Kim interrupts the conversation. Her child was just called a thug by some random bastard. The woman demands to know who this guardian even is, since Hyan Sung does not even have parents. Changbum recalls their conversation in the car, when the boy had asked him to be his guardian, likely for the money. But Hyan Sung said that while money is nice, he has bigger plans for his future. If cash was his only goal, he would have chosen an easier path, but now he needs something else entirely. The young man explained that he intends to cause massive trouble at school, needing the immense power and influence of Mr. Ko Changbum, and these will not be simple fist fights which everyone has already seen too many times. Some of his plans might get him in actual trouble with the law. In those precise moments, Hyan Sung wants to rely on Mr. Ko to use his massive influence. After all, with a man so well known in the city standing right behind the young man, nobody will ever dare to mess with the student. They will take him seriously. Hyan Sung wanted Changbum to act as his shield and deliver the exact result he needs. Hyan Sung promises that, in return, he will do everything possible to ensure that Ko becomes the next director of Myeongjin Construction. Changbum listened to all this with great interest, seeing absolutely no issue with it. Besides, the kid has a powerful aura of absolute conviction, the man tells him. To just trust him because beating people up does not matter. Changbum will handle everything. Back in reality, this woman demands to know who Hyun Sung's guardian is. The man stands up, looking down on everyone present, and says that he is indeed Hyun Sung's guardian. His name is Ko Changbum, and he is the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction. None of the people present even realize who they are talking to because Hyun Sung is his precious little brother. The guardian knows Hyun Sung is not the type to cause trouble for anyone, but to his shock, a parents' committee had actually been formed on his behalf, forcing Mr. Ko to drop everything and rush over. This school was slated to become prestigious soon, and Mr. Ko really wanted Hun to graduate without any issues. He was even planning to sponsor the school through his company, but those plans were about to change. Nobody expected this school to be so completely rotten to the core. Jongbon was just stating the facts, and now he questioned the teacher's actual duties. Aren't they supposed to teach students fair and righteous values? If so, why punish Hun, who stood up to the bullies and saved his classmates? Are these educators really going to turn a blind eye to years of abuse, only to punish the one kid who finally stood up? Where were the teachers when other helpless kids were getting beaten to a pulp? Family background shouldn't matter here, but it obviously did. These corrupt teachers took bribes from wealthy parents to ignore their kids' crimes. But trust me, Mr. Ko was definitely not about to let this slide. He threatened to tear the school down to its foundation and punish every single person who enabled those bullies, banning them from the city forever. This wasn't just an empty threat to Ko Changbom, this was real justice. The auditorium fell dead silent as the sheer weight of his words sank in. The principal couldn't comprehend how the director of Myeongjin Construction had become Hun's personal guardian, especially since the boy was supposedly a poor orphan. He lived with only his grandmother and brother, so this made no sense. But the director knew that supporting Minyu now meant losing any connection with Myeongjin Construction. In fact, he could get run out of town entirely. So the principal decided it was best to completely cut ties with Minyu's family. It was his chance to pivot and look righteous. If Myeongjin Construction sponsored them, the school's future would be secured. Becoming an elite academy would be a total guarantee at that point. Sure, people might call him a traitor or throw dirt on his name. But for the sake of his career, the choice was incredibly obvious. Clearing his throat, the principal announced he had actually heard rumors about a certain gang terrorizing the other students. Mrs. Kim gasped, staring in disbelief as he prepared to name her precious son as the ringleader. But the principal instantly shut her down, telling her it wasn't her turn to speak. He claimed he wasn't pointing fingers, but merely examining the cold facts. The committee was here to ensure justice based on the actual truth. He noted that Kim Hun had always been a top-tier student, boasting incredible academic achievements, so he must have had a solid reason for reacting this way. That is why Principal Adai Hyun offered to hear Hun's perspective. Hun was highly satisfied. Finally, they cared about his opinion, though only because of his powerful backer. In his tragic past life, he never had anyone to stand beside him. But now the young man stood up tall, calmly explaining how he had repeatedly told the teachers about how Parkman Skoll's gang was systematically torturing other students, yet every single teacher ignored him. They claimed Park Min-cheol was not the type to ever do something so sick, just a harmless prank. The teachers even told him not to cause trouble. They told him to grow up and handle it like a man. Empty promises of help came and went, but nobody ever actually looked into it. Teacher Kim stood there listening, feeling every single word stabbed directly at him. Hyun Seong was not done yet. He exposed how some teachers only scolded the tormentors, leaving them feeling above the law. Making them completely arrogant, Hyunseong then openly admitted to beating Jung Min-ho. And sending his vicious gang to the hospital, he was in trouble solely. For fighting back once, the real problem was not that he went too far, but that the entire school assumed he was completely harmless and weak. If those thugs had beaten him to death or thrown him off the roof, the school would have quietly buried the case because Hyunseong had no power. Was powerless, the sad truth, the rich walk away while the poor suffer. That vicious group is still active, waiting to ruin more lives, so he demanded. The parent committee punish every single one of them to the absolute limit. If they refuse, the young man promised to expose everything to the public. The truth about this place would make it an absolute disgrace to Deason. Justice, that is the only thing that will keep him quiet now. Mrs. Kim immediately started shrieking again, yelling that she would never let them slander her precious son, talk about complete delusion. She could feel the control slipping. Stepping away, she desperately called her powerful husband, expecting him to make this entire mess disappear. The moment his cold voice answered, Mrs. Kim started crying about the school meeting. She claimed she was just trying to defend their brutally beaten boy. Yet now, these people are turning around and blaming Jung Min-ho entirely. Even the school administration is taking these absurd accusations seriously. And all because Myeonjin Construction's eldest son showed up acting as a guardian. Ungrateful bastards, they are happily ignoring all the money they took. She begged her wealthy husband to come quickly and put these helpless peasants in their place. Instead of agreeing, her husband froze, asking if Go Changbam was really there. She quickly confirmed it, wondering if her husband already knew the man. A smug smile crossed her face, thinking her husband would roll up and take control. Silence, then her husband absolutely lost it, screaming through the receiver. He yelled that she was clueless, messing with people far beyond their level. Bow your head, accept everything, and get out, he demanded. She hung up the phone trembling, completely stunned by his terrifying reaction. That night, Kim Hyunseong stared at the ceiling, sleep completely out of reach. The school sentenced him to 100 hours of tedious community service. But the four real bullies faced much more devastating consequences. Total disbelief, Jung Min-ho froze, completely unable to process the verdict. The principal had just expelled him, dragging his feet into the hallway. The boy snapped, throwing a wild, desperate punch right at Hyunseong. But his mother lunged forward, desperately catching her son's arm in time. Hyunseong coldly looked down, telling the ruined bully to get on his knees. Forgiveness, Minyu could not believe his ears, but Hyunsung coldly repeated his demand. Kneel down, beg for mercy, Minyu simply could not understand why. He was already expelled, so why should he humiliate himself like this? But Hyunsung just smirked. Ask your own mother, she knows exactly why. Ask her if kneeling is the right choice, or face even worse consequences. If you beg hard enough right now, expulsion might be your only punishment. The young bully looked at his mother, begging for support. She turned away. Kneel down, she ordered him. Minyu realized something went terribly wrong. He did not argue. He dropped to the floor in complete defeat. Minyu bowed his head, whispering desperate promises. Hyunsung felt absolutely nothing. No relief, no satisfaction. That meant Minyu was in for a wild ride. His comfortable life was about to turn into a complete and total nightmare. Recalling that meeting, Hyunsung smiled, a satisfying end to a minor problem. He was one step closer to his ultimate goal. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A text from Minchul. He desperately wanted to meet with Hyunsung tonight. They met in a dark, empty park. Nobody was around to witness this. Hyunsung wanted no small talk. Cut to the chase, he ordered coldly. Minchul hung his head, shivering in fear. Cold sweat poured down his face. Finally, he muttered an apology. Bullying Hyunsung and the others was wrong. It was because of his own utter stupidity and complete immaturity, he claimed. He never realized how much pain they were all going through back then. But after a week in the hospital, he fully accepted his punishment. He promised never to torment anyone again, begging Hyunsung to let it go. He had even talked to their homeroom teacher, pleading for a savior. If Hyunsung agreed to show mercy, the expulsion would be cancelled immediately. Minchul begged for a single chance. Expulsion right now would ruin everything. He literally broke down in tears, begging Hyunsung to drop the charges. They would do absolutely anything, errand boys, homework, whatever he wanted from them. Hyunsung was actually a bit surprised. These punks acted like absolute kings at school. But in reality, they were just kids, easily broken with a snap. If they got expelled in disgrace, no school in the city would accept them. Their records would be permanently stained with a violent school record. That heavy label would effectively destroy their entire future and careers. Then Minchul confessed. He revealed a massive secret he was ordered to keep. Someone powerful had actually paid them to bully specific students in class. But here is the crazy part. Hyunsung already knew the mastermind. During his 10 long years in a vegetative state, Hyunsung had heard the news. A tragic report about a desperate student who jumped off a school roof. The kid left a suicide note exposing the Golden Circle, a shadow syndicate. They operated in elite Gangnam schools, but their leaders were never caught. The brilliant mastermind behind the circle saw how children suffered from horrific abuse. Instead of stopping it, he realized he could turn pain into a massive fortune. He recruited brutal bullies and athletic kids to serve as classroom muscle. Then he offered expensive protection services to incredibly wealthy, worried parents. Basically, it was a high-priced protection racket running right inside the school. They set up a system ensuring their clients always received top-tier grades if one of those protected kids made the honor roll. Their hired thugs would ruthlessly eliminate any classmate who scored higher. Only the lowest tier of the Golden Circle was ever exposed, leaving the actual mastermind leadership completely hidden in the shadows. To get absolute revenge on the monsters who ruined his entire life, Hyunseong must unmask the Golden Circle and destroy every single accomplice involved. He knew about this syndicate, but one detail made no sense. They operated in Seoul, meaning they should have zero influence in Dan. So Hyunseong demanded to know exactly who had hired Park Min-cheol instead. The trembling thug confessed that his senior bully, Shin Young-min, ordered it. He was a third-year thug who ruled the entire school with fear. Hyunseong had no clue about this since the syndicate operated in secret. By using low-level pawns in remote areas, meaning Shin Young-min likely had zero deep info, but he was definitely their local agent. Hyunseong knew extracting any real information out of him would be tough. He certainly would not talk willingly. Now, Yoon-min was built like a truck, strong enough to easily go pro as an athlete, but Hyunseong knew exactly how to break him. He coldly asked the bully if he wanted mercy. Hyunseong was fueled by an absolute mountain of rage inside. This hatred had been festering ever since he fell into that coma. He thought about things like forgiveness and quickly realized, absolutely not. Hyunseong leaned in close toward his victim and coldly promised him exactly what was going to happen to Park Min-cheol every single time they met. With that, Hyunseong struck Park Min-cheol down with absolutely bone-crushing power. In his past life, this monster grew up to be a doting father. The other bullies in the school gang grew up exactly the same. They achieved wild success, untouched by any pain, but not this time. Karma was guiding Hyunseong's hands now as he struck each merciless blow. He wanted his tormentors to carry these painful scars for life. By the next day, the entire school was whispering about the brutal fights. They whispered about how Hyunseong smashed the locks and fought with unmatched fury. Nobody could comprehend why this quiet student had suddenly turned so violent. He used to be a regular guy, maybe the pressure just broke him. Or maybe years of hidden rage had finally boiled over, Suddenly, the classroom door swung wide open, and Hyeon stood right there. The entire classroom went dead silent as everyone watched him. He calmly walked to the very back and sat by the window. Unexpectedly, Lee Jiangmin approached his desk, speaking softly. He had heard that Park Min-cheol's entire gang was getting expelled, and wanted to express his gratitude. He promised to help in any way. But Hyeon scoffed, asking why this weakling was suddenly trying to. He had been completely silent during the committee meeting. Lee Jiangmin stood frozen in place as Hyeon added that the boy's friends could have helped, but the Four Eyes got too scared. Now he came to say thank you, but Hyeon replied that he only trusted a friend. When they were buried in a coffin, sending his fake classmate packing, he ordered him to never show his face again, which left the remaining two guys standing there to discuss their next move now that Parkman and his gang were gone. Mencho had been expelled from school. Shin Yangmin was absolutely furious, extremely angry about this whole mess as he listened to what they were telling him. It turned out his friends had picked a fight with some random kid. Without realizing he had powerful connections, because of this, Ko Chungbong himself stood up for the guy, and as a result, Hyeon is now completely untouchable across the entire city, so everyone should just leave him alone. But Shin Yangmin had a completely different plan in mind. He saw this massive shift as a perfect opportunity to make serious moves. They could easily make tens of thousands of dollars off this clueless target right now. Misfit, and they should honestly be grateful for this fantastic turn of events. Shin Yangmin asked who was in charge of recruitment, demanding him to go up to the school rooftop immediately. Meanwhile, Hyeon sat silently in class. He fully understood that to defeat the massive golden circle, he had to excel academically. Studies, since those top students were always their prime targets. If he consistently secured straight A grades, the golden circle would be forced to make the first move, since he was already targeted by them. He was already a major thorn in their side. After graduating high school with stellar grades, it was obvious why they refused to leave him alone on Shin Yangmin's direct orders, because in any high school class there is some insecure kid threatened by a top student who desperately wants to eliminate the competition to secure their rank. Hyeon already had a few clear suspects in mind, but needed absolute proof before taking any action. For now, he had to prepare for whatever was coming his way. Hyeon had mapped out this grand plan a long time ago and was finally putting it into motion. He soon arrived at a completely unfamiliar place, scanning the area with curiosity. He was constantly thinking about Jongju Cho, the legendary warrior who became the very first Korean champion to win the MMA world title, but unfortunately, that incredible glory was now nothing more than a forgotten echo of the past. Stepping into the completely empty reception area, a voice asked if he wanted to sign up for the club, and Hyeon was absolutely certain of his decision to join this specific gym because he wanted to become a real fighter soon. The heavy lifter currently running the recruitments was summoned up to the rooftop. Park Jinwoo greeted Shin Yangmin, clearly looking very nervous to stand before this powerful representative of the Golden Circle, who was quite impressed by the giant's massive size and strength. Shin Yangmin patted the big guy on the cheek, telling him he had one highly crucial task for him to execute immediately. Kim Hyeon and break his spirit so badly that he can never speak a word again. Meanwhile, the trainer at the gym praised Hyeon for coming to the right place and assured him that he would achieve absolutely stellar results. First, he gave a quick tour of the facility, which offered training, recovery, and custom diets. Yun Kaunchul, the proud owner of this gym, was extremely. Yunchul made it clear that his training was pretty expensive, but the young fighter would learn directly through sparring. Then, the coach asked what motivated him to start training in the first place. Hyunseong replied he just wanted to learn how to fight well enough to thrash all the lowlifes who pick on other people. The coach paused for a moment and said they did not teach street fighting here, if the kid came to his gym just because he wanted to hurt someone. This was not the place for him. For that, he could just build some muscle so the bad guys would back off. Why not just lift weights and build up his strength? Hyunseong looked at this man, the former champion, and realized there was a real reason why such a famous and talented athlete had ended up running a cheap gym in the middle of nowhere, and that dark reason was banned performance drugs. After his third successful title defense, Yoonchul failed a random drug test. Steroids were in his blood. The champion admitted his guilt and made no excuses, but his career was over instantly. But that was not the main point Hyunseong had come here for. Another massive reason. The news was constantly reporting on Korean fighter Kim Myul, who had reached incredible new heights in just a few years and recently revealed the shocking secret behind his sudden success. It turned out he was no natural talent or self-made warrior. He achieved everything thanks to the secret training of his coach Yoonchul, who turned a third-rate wrestler into Korea's absolute best athlete. Hyunseong decided to get close to this disgraced coach and build a solid foundation for his body. The young man remarked that during his prime, Coach Yoonchul would stop at absolutely nothing to achieve his goals, and Hyunseong had that exact same drive. The coach grew somber and muttered that it was his absolute biggest mistake, one he would pay for until the day he dies. He admitted that if he could go back in time, he would never make that choice. The painful consequences of those active years still haunt him. Using his own dark past, he told the kid straight up he would not escape scot-free, so he needed to leave. Yoonchul was not going to train him. Going to a gym just to beat up some high school punks is a surefire way to end up in jail. The coach had practically stepped out of the reception room when he heard 2 words from the young man: 100 million. Hyunseong said he knew the coach was in desperate need of cash right now. If he agreed to train the boy, 100 million won would hit his bank account the very next day, and even if things did not work out and Hyunseong quit, that money would stay with the coach. No risk at all. Now, the main side effect of using performance-enhancing drugs is social disgrace and complete disqualification from the professional fighting scene. Hyunseong did not understand if Yoonchul knew the consequences. Why did he choose to use those illegal drugs? Did he really think the results justified the means? Now, Hyunseong admitted he felt exactly the same way. Perhaps after training, he would get into brutal fights left and right, and the sheer consequences of his choices would be worse than he ever imagined. Hyunseong assumed he would end up crippled or in a juvenile detention center, followed by a transfer to a real prison for his entire life. But the boy was completely ready for that, which was why he came to Yoonchul. Just like his coach back in the day, Hyunseong sincerely said he was at his wit's end. He also admitted he desperately needed Yoonchul. The coach immediately declared he knew for a fact that Hyunseong would never touch drugs. Having lived through that nightmare, he refused to let the kid get dirty. Training only, that was the deal, and the young man readily agreed. Everything, but there were still more conditions. Coach Yun demanded the boy step into the ring immediately, survive just 1 round, and the coach would recognize his strong will, finally accepting him. Later that night, the apartment door opened. His grandmother stood there. She gasped in absolute horror at the sight of her battered grandson. Demanding to know what happened, she saw Hyunseong looked beyond terrible. His entire body was covered in nasty bruises, and the poor old woman immediately burst into tears, her hands trembling as she asked for names. She was ready to hunt them down. Hyunseong tried desperately to calm her down, but she could see right through him. Every inch of his skin was black and blue. Meanwhile, alone in his quiet gym, Coach Yun drank, regretting his actions. He pulled out his phone and started typing a message to him. His message told the kid to forget yesterday's offer. Coach Yun had warned him to think carefully. He was not joking. He had seen it all, cocky street punks and desperate students alike. But goals and desires were nothing more than words to him. Once you step inside that ring, none of those things matter. Over his career, the coach had seen plenty of confident fighters, only to end up begging for mercy after taking a few punches. Coach Yun warned him that 3 minutes is a very long time when you are trying to survive against someone who will not stop. If Hyun Seong survived, Coach Yun promised to make him a champion. Then the timer started. The brutal test was finally underway. They squared off, and Coach Yun immediately prepared to strike hard. The young man's stance was shaky, but his eyes showed zero fear. Now Coach Yun wanted to see how fast this kid would break. Would he fall from the first blow or actually fight back? Hyun Seong tried to block, but a savage punch bypassed his guard and hit his jaw, leaving his head ringing like a kettle. He flew backward, crashing hard without even having time to react. Instantly, Coach Yun was looming over him, telling him to get up. Only 10 seconds had passed, then came another devastating flurry of blows. The power was unreal, forcing Hyun Seong to stay completely defensive. He knew a single clean hit would knock him out cold. Suddenly, a pause. The young man wondered why the punches stopped. Why was the coach sparing his head? But in that instant, a brutal kick slammed into his ribs, dropping him once more. The coach stood over him, telling him to give up now. But Hyun Seong, bleeding heavily, somehow dragged himself back to his feet, asking if 3 minutes were up or if they were done. In response, another onslaught began, and Hyun Seong realized he had. Completely out of breath, Hyun Seong still refused to back down. Seizing a perfect split-second opening, the young man lunged forward to attack. He swung his fist right at the coach's head, but got countered instantly. A heavy punch caught him right on the jaw, snapping his head back. The coach knew the boy was basically finished, but had to admit he was tough. He was a tough nut, but the coach did not want him giving up yet. He respected the kid's incredibly strong will, but he was absolutely not about to go easy. Especially not for a beginner who could not even take a single solid punch. But right then, he heard the battered Hyun Seong pushing himself up behind him. The young man demanded to know where the coach was going before the time ran out. Clinging to the ring ropes with one hand, he pinched his nose to stop the blood. Still, he stood, ready to resume their brutal sparring. The coach saw right through the stubborn act. It was time to end this. It was time to show him harsh reality before he crossed the line and got seriously hurt. So the coach warned Hyun Seong that all leniency was officially over. No more mercy. He was about to fight with every single bit of his power. A barrage of heavy strikes landed on the boy's head before another brief pause. Hyun Seong anticipated a sweep this time. He was ready to dodge it. But the veteran coach was clever, far too smart to be outsmarted. He slammed a kick into his ribs, leaving only 30 seconds left on the clock. If Hyun Seong did not get back up within 15 seconds, he lost. He desperately wanted to stand, but his battered body refused to move. The coach knew his last strike was simply too devastating for a test like this. He just wanted the exhausted kid to throw in the towel and go rest. Inside his own head, Hyun Seong started screaming at himself to stand. He had waited far too long for this exact moment. His mind flashed back to the 10 agonizing years he spent in a vegetative coma. How he had desperately begged for someone to just end his misery. And now he was about to fold after receiving a single strike. He felt the pain, but he had to stand up right now. The coach watched with growing interest as Hyun Seong slowly stood up. He did not care what happened to his body as long as he got revenge. He had absolutely no right to quit before making his enemies pay. He wanted to leave those who ruined his life completely broken. Even seasoned professional fighters would struggle to recover from a hit like that. Staring at Hyun Seong, the coach felt a chill wondering about his past. If someone with this level of incredible willpower actually learned how to fight, it could get dangerous. Coach Yoonyoung Cho respected his drive, but refused to let him live with regrets. He felt a personal responsibility to stop the young man. Without a single second of hesitation, the coach launched another brutal assault. Hyun Seong raised his hands, barely in time. He threw his fists up to protect his face, but it was not enough. He took yet another devastating, bone-rattling strike that landed flush on the side of his head. He commanded himself to endure, to stand, and to not dare fall. Despite the brutal strike and the agony piercing his body, Hyun Seong refused to drop. He kept standing his ground against all odds, refusing to give up even for a second. But another strike was already flying right toward his face. Saved by the bell, the timer went off just in time. He cursed and threw his gloves. As he walked out of the gym, he turned back with a final warning. Hyun-seong absolutely had to see a doctor first thing tomorrow. The coach also offered his bank account number. A shady broker had approached them days ago with a drug offer. They wanted them to perform on performance-enhancing drugs for big money. The coach knew that without the 100 million won from Hyun-seong, he might have actually taken that deal. Talk about a close call. The next morning, Hyun-seong casually mentioned to his grandmother that he had a minor issue with classmates, but it was nothing. Then he asked if they still subscribed to the newspaper. She nodded, saying she had subscribed for decades. Hyun-seong told her a special questionnaire was coming this month. He urged her to fill it out, maybe they would get lucky. Grandma scoffed, what was the point? Even if they won, moving away was impossible without any money. But Hyun-seong had a different plan. He explained that getting a loan was easy, or they could sell the property. Grandma wondered when her grandson became such a real estate expert. Hyun-seong just laughed in response. He knew Coach Changbom would rig the winners list for her. Of course, he wanted to give her 100 million won directly. But she would start asking too many questions, too risky. It was much better if she thought it was pure luck. The absolute key was ensuring she submitted that application. The next day on the roof, Shin Yunmin praised Jinwoo. He loved how Jinwoo handled things, making the target look pitiful. But Jinwoo was clueless. The bully was convinced that Jinwoo had brutalized the kid. He joked that looking at the battered kid made his own face hurt. Seeing his blank stare, Yunmin clarified the situation. He meant the kid who got dragged to the parent-teacher association. The poor guy was limping around, covered in nasty bruises. Yunmin was so pleased he declared they were basically brothers now. They would rule the neighborhood together after school. Jinwoo still had no clue but chose to play along. It was a perfect chance to get closer to his senior. So he told Yunmin to ask if he ever needed help. He promised to handle any request to his absolute best. And just like that, an unlikely friendship bloomed. Yunmin rarely praised anyone, but Jinwoo had supposedly done a flawless job. Later, Jinwoo went to investigate what actually happened to the kid. He was indeed beaten up, clearly thrashed for telling his parents. Everything, Jinwoo realized his senior held him completely responsible for this. Looking closely at the boy's completely battered face, it became clear. That Ha-yeon was no fighter. Jinwoo decided to pretend he did it himself so that absolutely nobody would dare cross him. He immediately told his crew to warn everyone, if anyone hung out with Ha-yeon, Jinwoo would personally break their bones. Meanwhile, during the first gym session, the coach explained that real boxing training requires extreme conditioning. Especially in their brutal sport, if a fighter gasps for air after just a few strikes, all this is useless. If Hyun-seong is truly determined, has nothing left to lose, he must grit his teeth and survive. He needs to prove to the coach that he has the stamina to sustain a fight. Only then does the real training start. For now, Hyun-seong must grind for 2 agonizing hours daily, but he was confident he could handle it. Because his absolute goal was to crush the legendary veteran fighter, Young Min. To do that, this hellish training had to feel like a breeze. After all, taking down the massive golden circle was going to require defeating monsters far deadlier than school bullies. Coach Yun watched closely, absolutely amazed that the kid was still standing after 2 brutal hours. This was not standard training, it was a complete and utter nightmare, designed to drain a person's entire soul, and yet, the coach felt, this kid possessed infinite potential. He admitted that after being kicked out from the official leg, he searched for clean ways to reach the summit. His personal career was ruined, but he wanted his student to shine. So Coach Yun decided to introduce a highly unorthodox training method. If Hyeon-seong survived this pace, he would develop truly terrifying strength and easily surpass his rivals. Hyeon-seong knew he passed the test. Now the real forging of an unstoppable monster could finally begin. School days slowly blurred together, leaving Hyeon-seong completely isolated in class. No one dared speak to him until a classmate unexpectedly sat nearby. He told Hyeon-seong the cold shoulder was unfair. This bold kid was Siwoo. They were actually classmates, but had never shared a single word before. Hyeon-seong stared back, feeling a mix of deep exhaustion and genuine surprise. Siwoo admitted he was initially scared of approaching him at school, but he hated seeing everyone ignore Hyeon-seong for such a petty reason. He suggested they hang out. Hyeon-seong was genuinely surprised by this offer. Siwoo reiterated that the silent treatment in class was extremely bizarre. No one would even look in Hyeon-seong's direction, keeping their distance. Then Siwoo dropped the truth. Jinwoo had threatened the entire class. Jinwoo declared that he would personally end anyone who spoke to him. Anyone associating with Hyeon-seong would pay with their life, but Siwoo laughed it off. They had been close friends since elementary school. Even if he got beaten to a pulp, he would never abandon him. Honestly, Hyeon-seong had nearly forgotten this boy in his brutal past life. Siwoo was the only one who defended him when everyone else turned away. It didn't stop until Parkman Shul's gang targeted Siwoo. They beat him brutally, snapping his leg. He vanished after that. Not a word was heard until Hyeon-seong ended up hospitalized. Siwoo visited him, wishing he had stayed by his side. Maybe things would be different, but he was just too terrified. He couldn't bear the thought of being beaten day after day. Sobbing by his friend's bed, Siwoo said they could have had a better life. A life where he never abandoned Hyeon-seong, but Hyeon remembered. He brushed his hand off his shoulder, rejecting his forced friendship. Hyeon-seong warned him to stop acting tough. He was on his own. Siwoo stared in shock. His friend clearly had no clue. He did not understand the true scale of this nightmare. Ring. The doorbell echoed. Siwoo stood up, refusing to run away this time. Alone, Hyeon-seong realized no one understood the hell waiting for him. The endless pain he would have to endure because of that golden circle. Still, he knew Siwoo getting involved would only make things worse. His friend would just end up as another helpless victim again. Hyeon-seong knew he had to cut off every single friendship. He refused to drag anyone else down into this dark pit. Even during class, he kept searching for a way to escape. A solid way to make Siwoo back off for his own safety. Once class ended, Hyeon-seong waited to finish their heavy talk. But Siwoo never showed up. Maybe that was actually for the best. And right when you think things might settle down, whispers start. Classmates were whispering about Park Jin-woo dragging Siwoo away somewhere. Everyone knew he was finished. They could have told a teacher. But they stayed out of it. Hyeon-seong knew what he had to do. He bolted out the door, running at full speed to save him. Down the school hallway, Park Jin-woo and his thugs cornered him. They demanded to know why he was ignoring their direct orders. Park Jin-woo was furious, wondering if the punk had lost his mind. But Siwoo didn't flinch. He asked who he thought he was. bossing everyone around and deciding who got to be friends with who. He declared Hyun Shong was his friend, and threats meant nothing. Before Park Jin-woo could even react, the blow was dealt. A clean kick straight to the jaw. Nobody saw that coming, right? Furious, Park Jin-woo screamed at his goons to destroy him. But they hesitated, watching Se-woo cautiously. He just humiliated their leader. They charged all at once, but Se-woo blocked and countered. He had absolutely no intention of running away or giving up now. He knew Hyun Shong would probably be furious about this fight. His friend wanted to keep him safe, but he couldn't stand by. Se-woo simply couldn't turn a blind eye to pure injustice. Hyun Shong was only acting tough, remaining a scared child inside. But they were brothers, and he would never abandon his friend. At that moment, a heavy kick to the chest completely knocks the wind out of Se-woo. He instantly doubles over in sheer pain. Meanwhile, Jin-woo has already recovered from the blow. Angry and ready, the brute is fully prepared to tear this insolent punk to shreds. Jin-woo orders his thugs to stay back, wanting to personally teach Se-woo a lesson. He delivers relentless punches to the face, claiming that annoying brats like this need discipline. They learn a few simple moves and suddenly think they are someone special. But in reality, they need to learn their place. Jin-woo issues a dark, final warning. From this day on, a brutal daily beatdown will be waiting for him. Se-woo's destiny is now tied to Hyun Sung, and their school days will become absolute hell. The bully continues the assault, declaring that during classes, lunch, and even school breaks, he will personally make sure to corner and beat both of them up. But right then, his arrogant speech is cut short. The office door violently flies open. Hyun Sung steps inside with clenched fists, slowly walking right up to the gang. He demands to know what Jin-woo is doing here and who he thinks he is. Jin-woo instantly recognizes Hyun Sung. Nobody else would dare to barge in like this. Hyun Sung was planning to handle this bully eventually, but it looks like his schedule just cleared. He is outmatched, so he decides to provoke Jin-woo to throw him off. Baiting Jin-woo is the plan, throwing out some sharp insults to trigger him. Calling him a pathetic, oversized coward who only knows how to pick on kids. Hyun Sung claims that Jin-woo only won because his entire squad was backing him up. A direct challenge is issued, leaving the surrounding thugs completely stunned. They can already see this guy leaving the school on a fast track to a wheelchair. Enraged, Jin-woo orders his crew to step aside, promising to break this arrogant kid himself. The giant immediately lunges, but Hyun Sung already knows how this bully fights. This guy only rules through bulk, making his moves incredibly predictable. Slipping the attack, Hyun Sung drives a powerful counterpunch right into the bully's jaw. It is almost comical how easily a single punch sends the giant crashing down. Pure embarrassment, Hyun Sung expects the furious beast to charge back up instantly. He is fully prepared to absorb the incoming strike and turn the tables. However, his rigorous training has already prepared him for this exact kind of fight. Giving no room to breathe, Hyun Sung unleashes a devastating barrage of hard strikes. Heavy punches rain down on Jin-woo's head. The slow bully still cannot process his defeat. Just a punching bag, he stands completely defenseless as Hyun Sung dominates. Pinning him down, Hyun Sung decides to end this so the bully will never dare stand again. The rest of the gang watches in absolute horror as their leader gets destroyed. They are convinced that this quiet kid has truly lost his mind. Before the final kick lands, Jin-woo breaks down and starts begging for his life. Begging for mercy, the bully admits his defeat as Hyun Sung steps closer. One more word about him, and the next beatdown will be fatal. To make an example of him, Hyun Sung issues a cold command. Demanding a loud apology, he forces maximum humiliation on the massive bully. This will show everyone in the room what happens when they cross him. Trembling and covered in blood, the beaten bully raises his voice. Desperately, the broken brute begs for forgiveness, admitting his absolute mistake. Whimpering about being forced, he looks nothing like a high school senior. Shin Yongmin had forced Park Jinwoo to do it. The guy simply had no choice. But now he realized all the terrifying rumors about Hyunsung were complete lies. Park Jinwoo kept begging for mercy, desperately apologizing and claiming he was only following orders. If it were not for Shin Yongmin, he would never have laid a hand on the kid, promising it would never happen again, but Hyunsung was not having it. Satisfied with the beating, Hyunsung shoved Park Jinwoo to the floor, calling him a laughingstock. Next, Hyunsung warned everyone in the room to leave Kim Si-woo alone for good, declaring that even a single bad look would make them regret it. Then, Hyunsung delivered a brutal kick to Park Jinwoo with all his might, ending the fight and showing just how serious he really was. Hyunsung warned he would hunt down anyone responsible, even if they hid across the world. He warned them that if they did not want a repeat of this beating, they must stay far away from Kim Si-woo, no matter what happened next. Later, recuperating in a hospital bed, Kim Si-woo remembered seeing Hyunsung arrive right before he lost consciousness. He knew his loyal friend had not changed, immediately rushing over to save him. The moment he heard about the trouble, he came. They could never turn their backs on one another. Kim Si-woo hated seeing his friend act like they were total strangers now. He insisted that even if he had to face that brutal beating again, he still would never abandon Hyunsung, but Hyunsung was determined to cut ties right now. To keep his friend safe, Hyunsung lied, claiming he did not beat up Park Jinwoo for Kim Si-woo's sake. He claimed he just wanted a fight and would gladly have sent Park Jinwoo to the grave. Deep down, Hyunsung knew this was only the beginning. This brutal clash was merely the beginning of his war. Hyunsung admitted that his goal was to completely destroy every single thug involved, even if he had to sacrifice his own life to make them pay. He was dealing with dangerous issues he could never explain, warning Kim Si-woo to stay away and stop bringing up their past friendship. Hyunsung wanted nothing but absolute revenge. If Kim Si-woo stayed close, he would only get dragged down again. Besides, the poor kid was already in terrible shape. Leaving the quiet hospital room, Hyunsung silently acknowledged their bond, but knew the old gentle Hyunsung was dead and gone. He warned his friend that next time he should turn a blind eye and never get involved, no matter what. The dark path Hyunsung walked now was far too dangerous for Kim Si-woo. Though heartbroken by these harsh words, Kim Si-woo understood that his friend was only trying to protect him. Hyunsung stepped out of the hospital room with a heavy heart, deeply grateful for Kim Si-woo's unwavering loyalty and support. Meanwhile, Shin Yongmin checked his bank account, expecting a massive payoff. The promised bounty had doubled, and he was already planning how to spend it. Earning 10 million won just for beating up a helpless teenager was a dream come true. Shin Yongmin wished every job paid this ridiculously well. He heard there was more easy money to be made at a neighboring school, so he decided to take on the extra work. Brutalizing high school students was turning into a literal gold mine for Shin Yongmin. He even dreamed of representing the Golden Circle Syndicate after graduation. Suddenly, the heavy cafeteria door slammed open, cutting his pleasant daydream short. A door slammed shut, completely shattering Youngmin's pleasant thoughts. He finally knew who did it. Shin Yongmin set down his phone and stared at the intruder. Hyun-sung stood right in the doorway, demanding to know which bastard here was Shin Yongmin. Naturally, Shin Yongmin was not about to tolerate that kind of blatant disrespect. He stood up, fully planning to tear this insolent punk limb from limb, but before he could move, Hyun-sung was already flying right at him. Shin Yongmin quickly raised a block, shielding his face. The heavy kick slammed hard against his arm. Shin Yongmin desperately wanted to know who this guy was. Where did this crazy bastard even come from? But Hyun-sung had zero interest in making small talk. He just unleashed a barrage of punches. Shin Yongmin was actually a skilled fighter. He knew his own worth, but this challenger had insane power, and his movements were unpredictable. Then the attacker finally revealed his name. the exact target Shin Yongmin wanted. Shin Yongmin was genuinely shocked. This guy was truly a complete monster. No wonder someone put such a massive price on his head. Honestly, this guy is unreal. But Hyun Sung was not there to talk. He just kept swinging with pure fury. He grabbed a wooden chair nearby. Shin Yongmin yelled at him to stop playing around. He demanded the weapon be put back, but Hyun Sung knew if he lost momentum now, he was dead. Suddenly, Shin Yongmin caught his flying fist, completely shutting down the attack. Shifting to the offense, Shin Yongmin grabbed him tight with one hand and started swinging. He mocked him, laughing that fancy tricks do not make up for a lack of brains. The heavy blows hurt like hell, but Hyun Sung had already survived way worse. The absolute hell his coach put him through made this beating feel like a joke. He knew from the very beginning that the odds were heavily stacked against him. Still, he had to prove something to himself. He was ready to go all the way. He did not expect to leave without breaking a few bones. This was do or die. Catching Shin Yongmin's kicking leg, he tackled him head-on, charging straight toward the glass. Hyun Sung shattered the entire window, using Shin Yongmin's back as a battering ram. Talk about insane. Shin Yongmin was terrified, completely unable to comprehend what this absolute psychopath wanted. Dangling him upside down outside, Hyun Sung snarled that he did not care if he survived. That was when Shin Yongmin's stunned friends finally snapped out of their shock. They realized their boss was about to fall, so they rushed to pull Hyun Sung away. They dragged him back as Shin Yongmin slumped down, shivering in absolute terror. Hyun Sung kept shouting that this was not over yet, not after what he did. He hurt his friend, and that meant Shin Yongmin had effectively signed his own death warrant. He had to remember this day forever. Hyun Sung truly looked like a total maniac. He kept shouting threats, promising to crush Shin Yongmin's head with a heavy chair. Even as the students dragged him out, his venomous shouts echoed through the hallway. He screamed that he would kill every last one of them without hesitation. As quiet finally returned to the office, Shin Yongmin stood frozen in place. He did not speak or even breathe. Eventually, he shook off the daze. Gasping for air, he quickly asked his friend if he saw him trash that loser. The friend nodded, confirming he saw it all, but Shin Yongmin's pale face. His pale face told a completely different story. Half an hour later, a sudden announcement boomed over the school intercom, calling specific students forward. They were ordered to report to the principal's office immediately. Teacher Kim walked in. He stared at the absolute mess, trying to comprehend what went down here. He knew this had to be Hyun Sung's doing. Time to clean up the mess. Handling Park Jinwoo would be easy, but dealing with the principal would be a massive headache. Principal Oh always wanted to make this school highly prestigious. But lately, recent events had threatened to completely ruin that golden opportunity. Teacher Kim could barely believe his ears when he heard the plan. Let it slide, Principal Oh ordered the entire violent incident to be ignored. Word was that the corporate family's eldest son would soon take over. During the parent-teacher meeting, he promised a massive donation to the school. To donate a massive sum once he became the company's new chief executive. Teacher Kim was completely stunned. He broke into a cold, nervous sweat. It was simple. The principal explained that sponsorship is not charity. Sponsors always expect something valuable in return for their massive contributions. The principal wanted to know exactly what Coach Hung Bong wanted from them. In a high-stakes situation like this, it was never about simple reputation. He needed a massive favor, and while Kim Hun was at this school, they had to keep all of the boys' wild actions completely quiet. Total silence. The school administration had to pretend nothing ever happened. After all, they were highly experienced in protecting privileged students. The principal quickly reminded Teacher Kim that this dirty work was not free. He promised that every single benefit available under their contract would go directly to Teacher Kim Yongchul before anyone else got a chance. And honestly, the new sponsor was already lining their pockets with a couple of highly valuable apartments waiting in the new luxury complexes for the right people. Since local real estate prices were skyrocketing, Principal O knew teacher Kim and his wife were desperately looking for a brand new place to live. Nothing would change. The teacher's daily life would remain exactly the same. They just had to look after one very important student, Kim Hun. Teacher Kim was thrilled, immediately promising that he would do his absolute best. The principal was glad to see his loyal subordinate taking this so seriously. It meant there was absolutely no misunderstanding between the two of them. Teacher Kim eagerly grabbed his hand, fully on board with the plan. He declared that their school would soon reach unbelievable new heights. Under his amazing leadership, making Principal O a legend in the city. The principal smiled warmly, telling him to save the blatant flattery. The only thing that mattered was keeping a tight watch on Kim Hun. A quiet graduation meant massive privileges directly from Mongshin. And of course, he promised not to forget teacher Kim's massive contribution. Wait, things were too quiet. The door burst open as a panicked teacher rushed in. He screamed that their star student, Kim Hun, had just been beaten up. Utter disbelief, the two men stared in horror, shocked by the news. Who did it? They demanded to know who dared touch the boy. In justice, Shin Yun-min sat in the principal's office, shouting in anger. After all, Kim Hun had attacked him first, yet faced no punishment. The principal was highly skeptical of this excuse from the older student. An elite martial artist complaining about a younger kid was just embarrassing. Besides, teacher Kim knew everything about Shin Yun-min's troubled past. He had been ruthlessly beating up younger students for years, at every opportunity. Naturally, the principal was furious, but teacher Kim kept defending the bully. He insisted that Shin Young-min was the real mastermind behind all the chaos. Shin Young-min was stunned. That monster had almost thrown him out a window. There were plenty of witnesses to prove it, but the principal lined in. He calmly told him that every accusation has witnesses. It is about trust. If they asked anyone on the street right now, the choice would be obvious. Who would they believe, a straight-A student or a troublemaker like Shin Young-min? The choice was obvious. Shin Young-min realized his arguments were absolutely useless. Frustrated, he snapped at the teacher. In response, teacher Kim grabbed him. He violently shook the insolent student by his collar, warning him to stop. If Shin Young-min kept playing the victim, they would expose his past mistakes. He needed to think very carefully about his next move. Would he submit? Would he confess to things he did not do? He was completely disgusted. These adults were just as corrupt as any street thug. To save himself, he bowed. He quietly apologized. He walked out of the office, his blood absolutely boiling. He was furious that teacher Kim had openly protected Kim Hyun-seong. He felt helpless. With graduation so close, he could not risk making a massive scene right now. Yet letting this slide was not an option. He needed serious outside help. Shin Young-min pulled out his phone and made a call. Meanwhile, a man waited. He was drinking coffee in his car, casually reviewing the latest target profiles. This job seemed standard, but Myungjin Construction had suddenly thrown a wrench in. Everyone who targeted Kim Hyun-seong got expelled. The school staff protected him. The broker knew the Golden Circle would never tolerate this kind of failure. If a mercenary failed, the blame fell squarely on the broker in charge. And that broker was him. Kang Tae-gu knew he had to act personally. As the Golden Circle representative for the suburbs, he could not look weak. He marched right into the principal's office, claiming to be Shin Young-min's uncle. He claimed his nephew was facing extremely unfair treatment from the school. The principal immediately denied it, insisting that their school was perfectly just. Kang Tae-gu knew corrupt administrators like him only moved when heavily pressured. They never take risks for free. He brought up the 4 expelled students. Those boys ended up hospitalized, yet the other party remained completely untouched. The actual mastermind of the fight received absolutely zero punishment. It was a clear double standard. that the police needed to investigate. Or perhaps the school was actively protecting Kim Hyun-seong for some reason. If they were hiding something, they could expect zero mercy from him. The principal chuckled, calling the story amusing, but noted they follow rules. There are legal procedures for everything, out of concern for the student's future. They decided to handle the discipline internally rather than involving officers. Mr. Kang was welcome to do whatever he thought was best. This arrogant brush-off made Kang Tae-gu furious. He looked at the principal. He warned him that unlike weak-willed people, he always keeps his promises. Dhwan did not even flinch. He remained completely unfazed. He calmly stated that cheap threats would never work on him. The officer listened to the whole story and shrugged it off as a clear case of self-defense against a bunch of school bullies. The cop even added that the truth was obvious without any real investigation, showing he had zero interest in ruining the kid's future. The officer explained that if Kim Hyun-sung were held responsible, then Shin Young-min would have to go to jail first. Kang Tae-gu was absolutely furious. He knew it was exactly because of useless cops like this that everyday people completely lost faith in the law. Since the police refused to handle things properly, Tae-gu threatened to take the whole matter public, knowing how fast a scandal spreads online, but the smug officer just laughed in his face, reminding him they were in the town of Dan. This was absolutely not some massive metropolis like Seoul, but a tight-knit country town with its own set of rules. So, even if he cried a river online, within 2 weeks, everyone would completely forget. Tae-gu simmered with rage at this local corruption. It turned out the local police chief was actually close buddies with the school principal. In a tiny place like this, everyone is neighbors. So burying a case quietly was incredibly easy. Beyond that, the reason for the principal's total lack of fear finally came to light. And here is the twist: the local mob was backing him. In small towns, gangs are always a massive headache. If they played by normal rules, cops could step in. It might be easy to buy your way into their circle, but keeping secrets and guarding turf always comes before any stupid amount of cash. That is why outsiders can never penetrate these syndicates. Even worse, the local police are in deep with the thugs, meaning decent and honest officers have absolutely zero desire to work in these rural backwoods. These cases are usually simple, but nobody wants the headache. Tae-gu realized that he could not afford to fail a job this straightforward. Yet, nothing was going his way, leaving him feeling utterly powerless. The Golden Circle Syndicate had never once let its name be dragged through the mud. If one broker ruined their record, the higher-ups would immediately dispatch a replacement to clean up the mess. The real problem was that all of Tae-gu's hard work and prior achievements would be wiped out, since failed agents rarely survived very long. The broker knew he had to keep his head cool and plan his next move. Meanwhile, Shin Young-min was pacing down a busy street now, frantically arguing on his phone, looking absolutely stressed out because the help promised backup was falling through. But Tae-gu made it clear that the organization did not play around, especially since Young-min had lied to him to pocket a secret kickback. When Tae-gu threatened to immediately report his failure to the boss, Young-min panicked and begged him not to, promising he would handle it himself. Tae-gu was just sick of it all, losing sleep over these completely stupid complications. He warned Young-min to get his act together and start thinking straight right now. They demanded the student be ruined. Young-min was merely ordered to slash his grades, send his lackeys to make it happen, to handle the dirty work, ensuring Hyun-seong barely scraped by with a C. But who would suspect that the entire faculty was actually in on it? They couldn't control every subject. Young-min listened, absolutely furious. His own broker had just completely backed out on him, leaving him stranded. Kang Tae-gu warned him once again. The Golden Circle never forgives failure. Screw up and they both die. All because of some random schoolboy. Young Min was completely lost. He had no plan, no options, and time was running out incredibly fast. Suddenly, Hyeonseong materialized right behind him, warning him never to look back. The next morning, terror gripped the school. Watch how fast rumors fly. Classmates huddled together, horrified to realize that their absolute toughest and strongest fighter, Young Min, had been utterly destroyed by Hyeonseong's hands. The beating was so savage that his entire body was covered in bruises. They whispered about Park Jinwoo too, who was left clinging to life. School was now a nightmare. Young Min remembered the warning, watch your back. He definitely wasn't bluffing. Hyeonseong simply stared him down, disgusted. Unbelievable. Did he honestly care more about cheap test grades than his life? Young Min froze, clenching his fists in absolute fury. Hyeonseong kept talking. The broker's chat with the principal only made things worse. Everything was deeply tangled, and the boy's situation grew infinitely worse. Hyeonseong was completely certain that Young Min knew who his sponsor was. The elite heir of Mongcheon Construction was his personal backer. He would leverage every ounce of that massive power to destroy him. Young Min was not getting away with a simple school expulsion. Hyeonseong declared that. He would drag this straight to court, securing the maximum prison sentence the law allowed, and once Young Min is finally released, Mongcheon's hitman will be waiting for him with a dark mission to make sure he can never settle down anywhere or be treated like a normal person. Young Min will be forced to flee the city, but the terrifying nightmare won't end there. Young Min listened, completely paralyzed with fear. This kid had lost his mind. But Hyeonseong didn't care about justice at all. He wanted total eradication. Erase every single parasite who meddled in his life. If Young Min wanted school peacefully again and live like a human, he had to pay his dues. Specifically, he had to grit his teeth and endure the brutal pain. Just like the dozens of students he ordered to be brutalized, Hyeonseong struck a brutal barrage. Young Min didn't even try to fight back. His wounds tore open and his face quickly became a bloody mess. Of course, he could easily have fought back, but Hyeonseong's friends made it completely impossible. Yet he knew deep down he couldn't leave the boy alone either. Otherwise, the Golden Circle would ruthlessly execute him for this failure. Rumors whispered they had absolute zero tolerance for any mistakes. A total dead end. Maybe prison wasn't so bad. Locked up in prison, he would finally be safe from everyone. To his panic strikes, Hyun Min starts slamming his head hard against his desk. He desperately wants to block out the sheer horror of this situation. He curses himself for taking dirty money from the Golden Circle. Now his only hope is that Hyeonseong bombs his upcoming exams. That failure buys him time. Hyeonseong knows this game well. For now, the threats hold weight, but things are about to change. Once he aces these final exams, the real hammer drops. This fragile house of cards will shatter completely. The corrupt teacher is frantically trying to cover his tracks. Meanwhile, the powerful Golden Circle itself will face a storm of fury. This is where his master plan gets absolutely genius. He is going to pit all these corrupt monsters against each other. He knows his entire plan hinges on securing perfect grades at all costs. He will use the principle, find sponsors, or simply study hard. The matter is settled. At school, things feel completely different now. His classmates are utterly terrified to even look his way. A thick wall of dread surrounds him, fueling his ultimate confidence. He continues training like a beast, pushing himself every single day. His combat skills are rising rapidly under his trainer's watchful eye. The coach teaches him that willpower keeps you from giving up. When your mind is set, physical limits simply cease to exist. Hyeonseong trains with absolute intensity, as if his entire life depends on it. Just being alive means you can still fight through the worst. The coach throws a heavy strike, testing his students' reflexes. To his satisfaction, Hyeonseong does not just dodge the attack. He slips the blow smoothly and counters with a lightning strike. The trainer instantly realizes this kid possesses a truly monstrous talent. He takes heavy impacts that would easily put normal fighters down. But now it is time to wrap up. Rest is just as important. The coach deeply respects Hyun Seong and his terrifying work ethic. If this were not a job, he would push him to go pro. Soon the young man heads out after another grueling session. The coach recently warned him to stop overworking his body. He is leaving the gym when he unexpectedly runs into someone. It is none other than his old friend Siwoo, who has come to sign up. Ever since his stay in the hospital, Siwoo has been thinking. He cannot comprehend how his old friend changed so drastically. Where did the happy kid go, the one who always smiled? The boy who did everything just to make his grandmother happy. Now it feels like that sweet kid has become a monster. Siwoo senses that Hyun Seong is sliding deep into a dark abyss. He remembers his friend saying he wants to completely crush his enemies, even if it means throwing away his own life for revenge. It is like his friend is gone, replaced by a stranger. Lost in these deep thoughts, Siwoo is startled as the door flies open. A classmate revealed that a huge fight broke out between Hyun Seong and Shin Young-min. It felt like his entire world was spinning, but the senior student confirmed the crazy truth. Hyun Seong had absolutely destroyed Shin Young-min, yet back when they were kids, they were actually close friends who played together. But now Hyun Seong had suddenly returned, bursting out of nowhere right into the classroom, almost tossing Shin Young-min out the window. He announced loudly that he would never let those cruel bullies get away with it. Se-woo was completely stunned by the news, barely noticing when his classmate quietly slipped out of the room. Wait, is his old friend turning into a monster? Se-woo knew that. Hopelessness often changes people. Soon, Hyun Seong approached his boxing coach. Could the raw talent they discussed really be Se-woo? Coach Yoon was shocked. To hear they were connected, Hyun Seong begged the coach to reject the kid, even offering to pay him off, but Yoon genuinely worried about the vulnerable boy, thinking a strong friend nearby could keep him out of trouble. So Yoon placed a heavy hand directly onto the young man's shoulder. He firmly explained that deciding who gets to train here was his decision alone, having absolutely nothing to do with the other kids. Afterward, the coach guided the newcomer around the facility, explaining their daily training routine. Once they finally got some privacy, a very raw and honest conversation began. Se-woo confessed that his only goal was to help his childhood friend. Knowing Hyun Seong desperately wanted to crush the school bullies, Yoon was honestly exhausted by these endless teenage fights and wanted to ignore them all. The coach snapped that this gym was never meant to teach kids mindless violence. If it were his choice, he would throw those troublemakers out of here instantly. But Se-woo suddenly ripped off his bandages and demanded the man look. He bore painful wounds from trying to stand up against a vicious bully. School brutality is far more terrifying than any adult could ever imagine. Without Hyun Seong stepping in, Se-woo might have ended up completely crippled. Even now, his friend is risking his own safety and refusing to run. So Se-woo begged not to be turned away, pleading for a real chance. He did not want any other trainer, he absolutely needed Yoon. Yoon clutched his head, realizing these teenagers were driving him crazy. Then Se-woo pulled out his wallet, admitting this was all he had. If that amount was not enough, he was fully prepared to work a part-time job. Hearing this, the coach snapped, completely unable to contain his frustration. He slammed his fist against the table, shaking the entire room. How could the world push these young kids to such extreme desperation? Se-woo declared that even without help, he would still protect his friend. When you are cornered with no way out, you simply cannot surrender. Yoon let out a heavy sigh, cursed under his breath, and finally agreed. Training starts tomorrow morning, but if Se-woo slacks off, he will regret it. The young man smiled, thrilled that he had finally reached an agreement. But the veteran trainer knew he was only offering him a basic lifeline. Just a small chance to survive in an incredibly cruel, violent world. With that, they said goodbye, but as he walked away, Seiwoo heard his friend call out. Hansung knew the coach accepted the newcomer, but he still had his own doubts. He needed proof, even if Seiwoo dragged himself straight into the depths of hell. He would claw his way back out through nothing but raw determination. Seiwoo had absolutely no plans to quit and calmly accepted. He was fully prepared to prove this bond actually meant something. Hansung wanted to show him that choosing to stand by his side was a mistake. He started painting a dark, brutal picture of what lay ahead. Getting killed in a street brawl, thrown behind bars, or left with absolutely nothing. Seiwoo calmly replied that he already knew the risks quite well. You can see the loyalty in his eyes as he steps up. He refuses to fight alone. Hansung issued one final warning. Win or lose, their friendship was officially over. Then Hansung exploded forward. He immediately went on the offensive. He wanted to slam Seiwoo down and burn every bridge between them. But instead, Hansung found himself desperately blocking a flurry of sharp strikes. He had completely forgotten that Seiwoo was once a top-tier athlete. Back then, if Seiwoo had fought Park in a fair one-on-one match, there would not have been a single piece left of the guy. Years ago, Seiwoo was a champion taekwondo fighter, dominating the tournaments. But during one major match, he had to face a rigged opponent. The son of the association president, Seiwoo lost for a completely ridiculous reason. He later confessed that he was never even given a real chance. That corrupt loss completely crushed his athletic spirit, but his inner grit remained. But even with that legendary drive, he still ends up pinned to the canvas. Hansung lectures his fallen friend about a dirty MMA technique. A fake sweep, a cheap trick to drop an unsuspecting rival. Hansung continues to rain down heavy blows, screaming at him to just surrender. Covering his head, Seiwoo remembers their childhood days and screams that he refuses. He will never give up on Hansung. His friend just hits him harder. Hansung cannot comprehend why this stubborn idiot is clinging to their bond. Seiwoo silently absorbs the pain without begging and suddenly starts laughing. His desperate laughter brings sudden tears to Hansung's eyes. The boy turns away. Why go this far? They were already supposed to be friends. Back in the day, Seiwoo was constantly bullied and beaten up. He hid the bruises from his grandmother, who raised him after his parents abandoned him. But then Hansung stepped into his life, saving him when it mattered most. That crucial, life-changing moment is permanently burned deep into Seiwoo's mind. That is why he is digging his heels in, and it is not foolish at all. He simply refuses to turn his back on a brother. That is his path. Leaving Taekwondo, standing by Hansung, those were his choices, and he regrets nothing. Hansung can no longer hold back his tears at this raw stubbornness. Why will this stubborn idiot not just stay down and give up? Suddenly, the heavy gym door swings open, and Coach Yunyong stands there. He barks at them to stop crying and start training right now. Otherwise, he warns, he is going to turn them both into champions. He couldn't understand why kids this strong were still getting bullied at school. Even without real training, they could easily dismantle a pack of school thugs. Throughout his long career, Coach Yun had faced countless professional fighters in the ring. But he'd never seen a teenager like Seiwoo perfectly calculate a close-range strike. Meanwhile, Hyen possessed an almost superhuman, primal will to survive. His keen instincts allowed him to turn any situation to his advantage. He could spot the slightest gaps in his opponent's defense with absolute ease. Turning to Hyen, the coach admitted he had a proposal he'd hesitated to make. But seeing such massive potential now, it would be a tragedy to waste it. Hyen had just claimed that Seiwoo couldn't possibly help him, no matter what. Yet here was the coach, suggesting they both forget all about school. He wanted them to drop out of school entirely and focus on sports. Sure, the Korean Sports Federation blacklisted Coach Yun, but he still had connections. If the three of them went all out, both boys would reach the top. Curious, Hyun asked the coach why he had even started wrestling. The coach replied that it was just a hobby before things got serious. But Hyun fired back that unlike him, he didn't care about sports at all. His body ached constantly. He wanted to quit, but his goal kept him going. If he couldn't achieve it, he would honestly rather die. That was his entire motivation. In this tense situation, the coach was the one who had to make a choice. He had to think it through carefully as Hyun turned to leave the gym. If he couldn't accept the terms, they were done. They would cancel the deal, go separate ways, and never cross paths again. Later on, the two friends met up in the gym after their practice. Hyun wanted to make absolutely sure that Sewoo wouldn't regret stepping onto this path. Once Sewoo confirmed he was ready, Hyun laid out some strict conditions. They had to train together every single day, without a single exception. And if Coach Yun refused, they would simply find another gym. Next, Sewoo was only allowed to pick fights he could physically handle. If he couldn't handle it, or if it felt criminal, he must stay out. Sewoo couldn't quite grasp what his friend was planning to get into. He wondered how he was even supposed to predict how a real fight would go. Hyun chose to keep the details to himself and just let things play out. But before they finished, he added that there was one final thing to address. Sewoo gasped when he learned that he would be getting a regular stipend. No questions asked, he had to either agree or walk away. On top of that, he had to study hard to secure a real future. Once they finally escaped this living hell, assuming they survived, life would be peaceful. That was the peaceful life Hyun was determined to build for both of them. He was going to guarantee a bright, safe future for his best friend. When Hyun returned home after practice, he found his younger brother Hyunjin waiting. Hyunjin was glued to the TV, intensely watching a live tournament match. He cheered for his favorite team as Hyun headed off to cook some dinner. Standing in the kitchen, Hyun remembered that this team made the finals in his past life. Even though his brother never mentioned it, Hyun knew exactly how this would end. Honestly, the boy just wanted some time in front of the television. Hyunjin loved video games, but he never asked for a computer, never wanting to burden anyone. He stayed quiet, refusing to be a burden. Hyun Seong thought deeply about his family. His grandmother, his brother Hyunjin, and Siu were his entire world. He would protect them from his revenge and make their lives so much better. Ready and willing to destroy absolutely anyone in his way. Anyone. Suddenly, his younger brother asked him to cook some sausages, prompting a warm smile. Wishing to do something nice, he was interrupted by an incoming message. The notification was from his coach, promising to stop pressuring Hyun Seong about sports. That was finally settled. A week went by in a flash. Midterm exams were starting, and the weather grew warmer and nicer every day. The school was preparing to publicly announce the top 10 rankings. This was the ultimate test, the time to prove their own worth. Every single student had to show what they were made of. Teachers strictly warned them that cheating would mean instant failure. Hyun Seong knew that if he failed here, his entire plan was dead. All his preparation would go down the drain before it even started. On one hand, grades meant absolutely nothing to him. He could just leak the truth. But honestly, going after the golden circle right now, that is pure suicide. Just exposing them wouldn't be enough to truly destroy them. They would just go into hiding and escape to win this. He had to become their worst nightmare, a constant, irritating thorn in their side. Force them into making sloppy, desperate mistakes. That was his goal. Their flawless reputation was about to crumble. Finally, exam day arrived. Grades were just a minor step in a much grander scheme. The true starting point for his war against their system. Starting today, his real life was finally beginning, in his past life. Classmates in his old life used to debate these kind of stories. The classic tale of a complete loser who suddenly tops the nation. But going back 10 whole years, that was a total cheat code. He easily became the best student just by repeating his teenage years. Realistically, if you are stupid in life, reincarnation won't save you. To truly be the smartest, you had to be brilliant from the start. He used to have those exact kinds of debates in his previous life. Recalling those moments, Hyeon-seong finally understood what that hypothetical guy felt. Memories of how desperately he studied in his past life flooded back. He had poured every single ounce of his energy into those school exams. Yet in the end, every single bit of that effort had been in vain. But right now, something truly bizarre was happening. He remembered everything. Every correct answer was perfectly clear, down to the last detail. Sitting there, he realized he was deeply trapped in this endless high school loop. It was a vicious cycle he might never actually break out of. Even when he was being violently abused, he had forced himself to study, only to regret it deeply while rotting in a hospital bed later. Those agonizing memories were permanently burned into his mind, never leaving him. Hyun-sung was certain he would never forget a single second of the torment he had endured, not once, because those brutal moments were precisely what made him strong. The past made him. When the exam ended, the students scattered to compare answers. They huddled in groups, everyone frantically calculated their potential scores. A popular classmate named Hyoji walked over. She wanted to cross-check their answers. He was surprised. Hyun-sung never expected anyone to actually talk to him. He politely refused. He told her he had no interest in checking. He had no such plans. He remembered this classmate from his past life. She was gorgeous, exceptionally popular with all the boys. She had even confessed her love to him, but Hyun-sung turned her down to focus on studying. Now, Hyoji eagerly insisted on grading his exam paper for him. She set to work. As she compared their sheets, every answer matched perfectly. Classmates listened in absolute awe. Hyun-sung decided to take full advantage of this. Using her popularity, he would easily draw all the attention to himself. When she finished, Hyoji froze in utter shock. Hyun-sung had aced the test. The next day, Hyun-sung called Teacher Kim up to the school rooftop. Teacher Kim praised him. He called the boy the absolute best student here. He was ready to help with anything, but Hyun-sung did not waste time. He asked directly, what did Teacher Kim know about the Golden Circle? The teacher looked blank. He claimed he had never heard of any such circle. Hyun-sung warned him to pay close attention. This was a matter of life and death. It sounded like pure fiction. In the modern world, it seemed impossible. Meanwhile, the school principal was meeting with an elite private academy representative. The visitor was baffled. How did a previously useless student take first place? He suspected cheating. After all, this specific exam was designed to be notoriously difficult. The principal defended Hyun-sung. The boy had always possessed incredible hidden talent. He was absolutely certain no student received any special treatment on these exams. The visitor warned him he would report this directly to the academy. The principal scoffed. Why did parents waste millions on private tutoring anyway? His own school had an excellent prep program that yielded amazing results. Their public program was more than capable of producing elite students. Just then, Teacher Kim entered. He asked if the academy was complaining again. The exam had been insanely hard. The principal had designed it that way. His goal was simple. He wanted to ensure that a perfect score was absolutely impossible. Yet Hyun-sung did the impossible, and it was clearly no mere fluke. Staring at Hyun-sung's perfect exam paper, the principal was left entirely breathless. He could already picture the boy securing the highest score in the nation. He would enter the prestigious National University as the undisputed top freshman. Teacher Kim listened to the principal's wild predictions in complete awe. He agreed it was highly possible that everything would play out exactly like that. Finally, they had a golden chance to make their school the absolute best in Korea. Massive sponsorship from Myeonjin Company coupled with Hunsung's grades, would make it happen. But there was a catch. The principal realized Hunsung was also their biggest problem. Their newly rising school could easily come crashing down in an instant. Any second. At that moment, the principal reminded teacher Kim Yang-shul of his request to look. After Kim Hyun and up until now, absolutely everything had been going completely perfectly. But the principal announced that from now on, Kim Hyun was the school's most valuable asset, meaning he needed to be protected and cared for more than before. He acknowledged that their rising star had truly blossomed under the guidance of homeroom teacher Kim Yang-shul. Starting this month, the teacher would receive a massive bonus, and this was only the beginning. He could not let this opportunity slip away. Kim Yang-shul was now the key to their overall success, and these perks would continue even after Kim Hyun graduated. The teacher could not take his eyes off the envelope of cash and promised to carry out his mission with absolute dedication. So when the student called his homeroom teacher to the roof, Kim Yang-shul ran there immediately. The young man asked what the teacher knew about the Golden Circle. As expected, that clueless Kim Yang-shul knew absolutely nothing about the organization. So Kim Hyun decided to share a crucial secret, telling him to listen closely. He explained the Golden Circle. When the youth finished his explanation, he made it clear that if anything happened to him, Kim Yang-shul would go down too. No wonder the terrified teacher panicked, desperately wanting to know what he had to do. Kim Hyun made it clear that he had no intention of stopping Shin Yoon-min. He added that there was no need to act just yet. He would give the word, and until then, the teacher must simply wait. The young man turned to walk away, saying that no matter what went down, teacher Kim Yang-shul should just ignore it all like usual. That was enough for now, but he needed to stay completely ready for the right moment. The teacher realized he could not underestimate him. Meanwhile, Shin Yoon-min was lying on the cold ground bleeding, a heavy boot pressing on his skull as a harsh voice delivered a final warning. Kang Tae-gu, adjusting his jacket, made it clear that if Shin Yoon-min failed again, he would lose his entire arm. Leaving the battered boy in the dirt, Kang Tae-gu reminded him that this was his absolute last chance. Shin Yoon-min lay there trembling in absolute agony, bleeding from his wounds, all because of Kim Hyun. That same evening, the beaten boy met his gang, and they suggested shattering Kim Hyun's knees, but doing it off school grounds. They knew they could easily cripple the target, leaving him completely broken. However, outside school, the ruthless guards of the Mongshin Corporation would jump them immediately, and they would be in serious trouble. They had no other choice but to strike inside the school itself. Those corporate thugs could not touch them there. The goal was to make Kim Hyun realize that his backing was completely worthless. But remember, Park Man-seul and his entire crew tried to fight that same bully and ended up getting expelled from the academy. Now, Baek Seon-ho, known as the Monster Gorilla, was a junior who decided to voice his own plan. He suggested a much smarter approach, suggesting they gang up on Kim Hyun. All at once, it was a well-known fact that the principal was obsessed with protecting their reputation. He could easily punish a few guys, but he would never act if 30 of them stood together. Shin Yoon-min completely agreed that to the principal, the school's reputation was absolutely everything, so he would never cross that line. It really seemed like a flawless plan. Then a few days passed, and Hyun-seong sensed that something was off. Someone was constantly bumping into him, shoving him, throwing insults, and provoking him at every turn. Hyun-seong realized that what he had waited so long for had finally begun. These students were literally taking turns trying to pick on him in any way they could. Hyun-seong was just walking down the hallway when another student suddenly chased after him. The guy caught up and smacked him hard on the back of the head, demanding to know why Hyun-seong did not turn around after being called so many times. Hyun-seong did not react to the slap at all, but the punk kept pushing him, demanding an apology. A few more students gathered around, making it look like Hyeon was being completely disrespectful to his classmates. They claimed they just wanted to talk, but he was ignoring them. Hyeon stopped in his tracks, smiled, and promised to apologize for his rude behavior right then and there. The next second, a brutal punch slammed directly into the nearest guy's face. He did not even have time to raise his hands to defend himself. A volley of brutal punches followed, sending several other students flying in all directions. One of the guys dropped to his knees, sobbing as blood dripped from his nose. Hyeon kicked him, warning him not to pass out just yet, but to remember this and pass it to their boss. Hyeon told them all to stop straining their few remaining brain cells and to come together as a group next time. Just then, the door flew open and Gorilla appeared with his buddies. Bae Sung-ho had initially planned to set the freshman on Hyeon and overwhelm him with numbers, but the situation had completely changed. Hyeon stood tall as Gorilla approached him, warning that if they fought inside the school, they would get in massive trouble, so they should head outside the gates where teachers would not interfere with their business. And soon, Hyeon stood directly in front of the gang of bullies. They were finally off school grounds, after spending 10 years as a vegetable. He had rethought his plan 1,000 times, but this specific situation, imagined with Kang Jongseok, was nothing more than a wild fantasy. Of course, everything looks better in your head, and fantasies always play to your advantage. Hyeon recalled how they had begged him for mercy and admitted their mistakes back then, but in reality, things rarely go according to plan. Now Hyeon knew that a great deal depended on this clash. He had to buy more time or the cost would be far too high. He eyed the group and asked if this was truly the best they could bring. Bae Sung-ho mocked him, promising to bring him back down to earth if he did not understand. Hyeon had crossed paths with the powerful and dangerous Shinyeong group. Hyeon immediately cut him off, stating he knew exactly why they had gathered. He told them to cut the talking and get right down to business. Hyeon pointed at the crowd, watching them from a distance, and claimed that only cowards gang up on a single target. Instead, he proposed a series of one-on-one duels, starting with Bae Sung-ho himself. He just hoped the guy wouldn't chicken out, no hiding behind his crew. Kim Chong-hyun, famously known as the Young Demon, claimed he was ready. It would be one-on-one, with zero complaints, since there would be no rematch. No rematches. Within these school walls, raw power is the only law. Until now, Chong-hyun relied on dirty tactics, but that cruelty ruined his standing. He used whatever he could grab: heavy locks, metal chairs, and weapons. He specialized in coward attacks on unsuspecting targets, showing zero mercy. Pure desperation. That is how cowards act when they rely only on luck. Hyeon had to exploit this weakness and seize control of the situation. He needed to correct this misunderstanding immediately for his plan to work. Building a solid foundation here was the only way to transform the place. He wanted a fortress under his absolute control, erasing all doubts about him. Nobody could question his dominance. Kim Chong-hyun, the Young Demon, stepped up. He agreed to a one-on-one duel, warning there would be no second chances. One fight, that's it. Chong-hyun suddenly lunged forward with everything he had. He threw a heavy punch aimed at Hyeon-seong's face, expecting a quick victory. But the blow never connected. Hyeon-seong casually blocked it with one hand. Pure rage, this punk seriously thought he could stand up to him. He would break him, but Hyeon-seong slipped the next strike cleanly. His counterattack was blindingly fast, launching a right hook into the demon's jaw. Shock, total silence. Hyeon-seong just one-shotted the school's absolute worst nightmare. He went down hard. Up at the window, Park Jin-woo watched. Messing with Hyeon-seong was clearly a one-way ticket to the hospital. A massive mistake. He should have stayed away from day one. Jin-woo spun around, utterly furious and ready to scream at them. Too late, a massive fist was already flying straight at his head. He stumbled back, his teeth rattling as he desperately tried to stay standing. Standing there was Seiwu, announcing it was finally time to settle the score. Just minutes before this, Hyeon-seong had found his friends helping a beaten senior. Seiwu had stepped up to his buddy, demanding to know the plan. He made it clear that he was down to do whatever it took. No words, Hyeon-seong's cold stare made it clear he was not talking. He reminded his friend of their promise to stay out of reckless fights. Seiwu just wanted him to stop trying to fight every bully alone. Hyeon-seong got the concern, but his friend getting involved would change nothing. Getting outnumbered and beaten to a pulp was not part of his plan. He shut down the argument, determined to handle this mess entirely alone. Much cleaner, he honestly believed doing this alone would be much easier. Still, there was one specific thing he actually needed his friend for. Seiwu nodded eagerly, hanging on to every word of the plan. The target, Park Jinwoo, time to get some payback on that bald thug. Now Seiwu is delivering that payback with a massive grin. Jinwoo is fuming. He swings wildly, screaming that he should have broken this blonde punk's legs. That way, he would have been too terrified to ever show up again. Instant shutdown, a devastating kick slams right into his open jaw. The bully simply could not believe what had just unfolded. Was he really about to get knocked out with a single punch? Students in the hallway froze, watching the freshman completely dismantle the school bully. It was an absolute disgrace to watch. Jinwoo kept swinging his fists wildly, screaming that Seiyu wouldn't leave the hallway alive, but not a single punch landed. Seiyu patiently bided his time, waiting for the perfect opening to present itself. As soon as Jinwoo slipped up, Seiyu launched a brutal kick right to his jaw. Another crushing blow followed, ending the match instantly. Nearby, Hyeon-seong was finishing his own fight. Bong-ho stood by, watching this young kid easily dismantle his opponents. He realized that Hyeon-seong was highly tactical, completely outplaying them at every turn. Together as a mob, they could have easily crushed him, but Hyeon-seong was smarter. He forced them into one-on-one duels, dropping his fifth sophomore in a row. The whole school watched from the windows in awe. Seong-ho knew the stakes were high. Stepping into the fight only when his opponent was exhausted would look pathetic. It would be an absolute disgrace. He had to step in right this second. He needed to earn real respect. Seong-ho yelled out to stop the madness. Beckoning Hyeon-seong to step forward, Seong-ho instantly warned him with a cold glare. Explaining it was nothing personal, but he could not let his crew get destroyed. Hyeon-seong just smiled. He suggested they should not recruit such absolute weaklings into their ranks. Seong-ho was absolutely furious. He lashed out, demanding that the freshman watch his mouth. Hyeon-seong tried to counter, but got caught by a heavy, direct punch. Yet he absorbed the impact effortlessly, his face twisting into a mocking smile. Seong-ho noticed that the kid was not even trying to dodge the incoming attacks. He seemed completely out of his mind, eager to trade blows head-on. Seong-ho landed another strike to his jaw, sensing a clear gap in power. The two continued exchanging precise, heavy blows despite the difference in strength. Seong-ho wanted to see exactly how long this cocky kid could actually last. But right then, a devastating, precise strike smashed straight through his defense. Teeth flew as Seong-ho gasped in agonizing pain, desperately clutching his shattered mouth. Hyeon-seong was in a complete frenzy, grabbing his dazed opponent by the hair. Hyeon-seong pulled back his arm, preparing to deliver the final, crushing blow. His fist found its mark, leaving his opponent down in a pool of blood. Hyeon-seong calmly turned to the remaining thugs who were still standing in shock. He demanded they stop standing there like statues and drag the beaten guys away, and deliver them straight to Shin-young, who sat alone in his office. He refused to watch the fight, laughing at how foolish Hyeon-seong was being. Picking a fight with senior students like this would bring major consequences. And get this, a panicked lackey burst in with some shocking news. He stammered that even the mighty Bong-ho had been utterly destroyed. When they tallied it up, Haiyan Xiong had already taken down a massive crowd. 9 fighters, including Xiangho, lay defeated. Shin Young said they would adapt. Everything was playing right into his hands. After all, this was a school. And 9 brutally beaten students would guarantee a massive uproar from the teachers. A student rushed straight to the faculty office, shouting about the violent brawl. He frantically explained that a freshman named Haiyan Xiong was causing absolute chaos. He had already brutally beaten the second years, but he still wasn't done. Blood stained the floor, with unconscious bodies scattered everywhere. Someone urgently dialed the hospital to report the absolute disaster at school. The caller burst into tears right on the phone, crying out desperately. He screamed that it was serious, begging them to hurry before people died. Shin Young Min believed that if they all aligned their stories, it would be easy to blame everything on simple self-defense. Even if they succeeded, they could not break Kim Haiyan Sung so easily. But they refused to back down. Suddenly, a phone call rang. The principal picked up, realizing it was the warden on the line. Their conversation was tense, flashback to a teacher's meeting a few days ago. Teacher Kim asked his colleagues if they knew about the Golden Circle. Since they did not, he explained the dark truth about this group. It was a gang that monetized school bullying into a lucrative business. Once a student became their target, the ruthless bullies showed no mercy. Now this dangerous organization had officially infiltrated their own school. The recent chaos involving Park Min-cheol's gang was directly tied to them. They were all card-carrying members of the circle. The teachers froze. Can you even believe that? Gangsters profiting off of helpless kids. Teacher Kim saw his colleagues were completely at a loss about what to do. Any ties to the Golden Circle would instantly destroy their careers. The teacher announced that they were all in this mess together now. They faced the school's worst thugs, including Park Min-cheol and Shin Young Min. Bong Ho and Shin Young Min were the absolute strongest beasts on campus. Dozens of other students were also linked to this shadowy syndicate. Every teacher understood the absolute nightmare if this information leaked out. It would not just be the school administration that suffered. The school could shut down entirely, leaving every single teacher jobless. With their reputations ruined, Teacher Kim begged them to stay away. Do not get involved with any students connected to the circle. They had to continue working as usual and completely avoid conflicts. Those higher up would handle the situation, so nobody should play hero. Teacher Kim advised against crossing them, even when reminded of moral duty. Anyone caught in the crossfire would simply become their next target. Were the teachers really willing to risk their lives for this? Now in the present, a frantic student ran up reporting a fight. But the teacher simply demanded they stop, making up lies and panicking. Even the police officer warned them that false alarms were illegal. He told them to stop messing around or face heavy fines. Shin Young-min was furious that the teachers just stood by doing nothing. He felt completely powerless, unable to understand this utterly broken system. His anger boiled over as he realized how messy things truly were. The adults were uselessly ignoring them, leaving the students entirely alone. Shin Young-min realized he had to crush Kim Haiyan Sung himself. Suddenly, his phone vibrated with a brand new message. He is stunned. The man puffs his cigarette, asking if they even know who is standing right in front of him. Meanwhile, the terrified clerk behind the counter stammers that he obviously recognizes the infamous Ko Chungbom, nervously asking why such a powerhouse would visit him. Ko Chungbom casually replies that he wants to add this loan shark's name to his contract while launching some minor yet crucial new projects. Instantly, the loan shark realizes this is his golden opportunity. If he partners up with Mayang Chin, running his shady operations in the city will become completely effortless. Ko Chungbom explains that the loan shark only has to do one simple, trivial task: issue a massive loan under the name of Shin Yongmin. Suddenly, Yongmin answers his ringing phone, only to hear desperate, frantic screaming from his family, demanding to know what crazy trouble he is causing at school. The boy has absolutely no idea what they mean when they scream about Kim Hyun-seong, and warn him to never, ever lay a single finger on that guy again, because ruthless debt collectors just trashed Yongmin's family home, nearly beating his father to death. It is all his fault. Yongmin stands there in complete, paralyzing horror. Total chaos. He cannot understand how his entire life is spiraling this fast. Then Ko Chungbom grabs the receiver, casually introducing himself to the boy. Yongmin freezes, completely speechless, as Ko Chungbom begins delivering cold, precise instructions. A red seizure tag is about to be slapped onto his family home. His father tried everything to prevent this, but the creditors are coming to collect the cash. Now Ko Chungbom drops the real bomb. His father's crushing debt is officially transferred to Yongmin, and he must pay it back to save his family. His entire life is completely shattered, but there is still one option. Yongmin must become Hyun-seong's personal punching bag, acting as a secret, silent stress reliever. The boy tries to salvage his pride, desperately objecting on the basis of honor. Ko Chungbom just laughs. In a real fight, winning is the only thing that matters. No room for error. Yongmin cannot afford to forget a single word, because a man like Ko Chungbom never, ever makes idle threats. Cut to the schoolyard, where Hyun-seong just brutalized another second year when a new challenger steps into the arena. Shin Yongmin arrives, drawing every eye in the crowd. Yongmin lunges, but those terrifying, cold instructions echo in his head. He cannot leave even a single scratch on Hyun-seong's face, to his dread. Yongmin realizes his opponent is not even bothering to dodge his attacks. This makes landing a clean blow nearly impossible. Suddenly, Hyun-seong grabs his wrist, sneering that the boy already got the memo and knows his role as the punching bag. Hyun-seong locks his head. He unleashes a barrage of strikes to his face. Pure violence. He cannot understand why the kid was so stubborn earlier. Hyun-seong promises to stop if Yongmin drops to his knees like a good little dog, asking if he really wants to keep risking his actual life over some worthless teenage pride. As the heavy fists rain down, the boy realizes he is facing a complete psychopath. Hyun-seong keeps egging him on, waiting for Shin Yongmin to finally break. If there were no crowd watching, maybe Yongmin would have swallowed his anger. But as a hot-headed teenager with his back against the wall, he cannot. He snaps, losing his temper. The desperate boy unleashes a brutal counterpunch. These are incredibly professional strikes, showing off his past boxing background. Those tournament recordings were all online, and Hyun-seong alongside. His coach had studied every move to find the perfect counter, seizing the gap. Hyun-seong landed a flawless blow straight to his head. Then came a barrage of clean strikes, followed by a left counter punch. During this sequence, Yongmin always dropped his guard and exposed himself. It was an easy opening to exploit, right before a massive strike landed. Yongmin put absolutely everything into his next move to end this quickly. He threw his entire weight forward, creating the perfect situation for a counter. Hyun-seong only needed to be a split second faster, and he was. He grabbed his opponent's arm, completely ready to snap it. The crowd watched in silence. His victory was undisputed. He proved his absolute dominance and told everyone to leave. Meanwhile, the principal finished his phone call and thanked the manager. He promised to arrive in person soon, confirming everything was set. Hyun-seong entered the office, feeling deeply relieved to see his friend. His friend was completely safe and sound, much to his relief. They greeted each other, though Se-woo was clearly still anxious. He warned that they had drawn too much unwanted attention today. Breaking Yongmin's arm was just taking it way too far. But Hyun-seong told him not to worry about any of that. Fighting cheap thugs like Park Menchul had taught him a massive lesson. In this world, the strong always rule, and there are no doubts left. Meanwhile, their teacher was absolutely horrified by the whole situation. He realized Hyun Seong had snapped, and things were officially ruined. Yan Min held his broken arm, begging his teacher for help. But the corrupt teacher only tried to squirm out of trouble. He claimed the injury was just an accident on the stairs. The teacher warned that if anyone mentioned Hyun Seong's name, they were done. Their own dirty secrets would immediately be dragged into the light. Speaking about him was now a deadly dangerous game for everyone. Staring in complete disbelief, Yan Min simply couldn't believe his ears. How could his own teacher betray him and say such things? But the teacher did not care, reminding him of his past protection. He was the one who kept their dark secrets covered up before. None of them cared about a teacher's duties back then anyway. He warned Yan Min to think twice before speaking out again. Yan Min stayed quiet, understanding the heavy threat perfectly. Teacher Kim always got his way. Meanwhile, broker Kang Taegu knelt with his hands bound tightly, waiting for his boss to speak. He begged desperately for a final chance, promising to fix his mistakes. He even offered to personally get rid of the target. But the boss coldly reminded him of the strict rules of their business. They satisfy their clients by keeping things to typical schoolyard violence. No one in their organization was going to prison for premeditated murder. The Golden Circle gang operated on a much higher level. That was how they operated, quietly, keeping their entire system completely under the radar. But now Taegu was talking crazy, suggesting they just kill the guy. Everyone already knew that Hun Seong was absolutely not an easy target. He always wriggled out of trouble like a cornered beast under pressure. Still, every wild beast has its tamer, and the broker was sure of it. A week later, Yun Min suddenly received a direct message on his phone. He needed to leak his employer's identity if he wanted Hun Seong to back off. Yun Min had no idea how Hun Seong even caught wind of the situation. He definitely couldn't get away by playing dumb and claiming he knew nothing. But the warning chilled his blood. Hun Seong promised to finish him off. Was this nightmare really not over, even after breaking his arm? Hun Seong was a total psychopath, but Yun Min just wanted to go home. His money was withheld again, making him absolutely furious. This was obviously Hun Seong's doing, but he tried to block it out. He just wanted to sleep first, but a nasty surprise was waiting inside. Slipping back to his apartment, he desperately hoped his father was out. He really did not want to deal with another massive shouting match. Instead, he walked right into a total disaster zone inside. Before Yun Min could even process the chaos, a heavy blow struck him. His enraged father was already on him, swinging in pure fury. Yun Min tried to ask what happened, but his father suddenly broke down. Sobbing, Minsuk cried that he should have begged his son to stay away. Through his tears, Minsuk blamed him for destroying everything. He yelled that the boy had completely ruined their lives. Limits existed, but those lines were now completely and officially crossed. He was never a perfect provider, but his son destroyed their last hope. Their lives were officially over, all because of one guy. Yun Min backed away, only to slip on a loose bottle and crash down. Blinding pain flared through his casted arm as he hit the floor. Suddenly, his phone rang. He was on his knees before Hun Seong now. He begged, admitting he should have never messed with the Golden Circle. He was foolish to act like a big shot and bypass his limits. Yun Min begged, promising he would have sold out his boss instantly. But the terrifying truth was, he truly had no idea who called the shots. The broker only sent late payment texts before completely vanishing. Now Yun Min desperately pleaded to work as his personal messenger. Tears of genuine terror streamed down his face, but a cold question came next. Hun Seong quietly asked why on earth he should ever forgive him. Yun Min had already been warned never to cross Hun Seong's family. Yet he chose to kick off this entire war, assuming he could handle it. Now the weeping boy could only admit his own extreme stupidity. He deeply regretted everything, and Hun Seong actually believed his desperation. Shadowy clients never share their real details with low-level grunts anyway. But since he was begging so hard, Hun Seong offered a final lifeline. He just had to survive for one single month to prove himself. If he behaves for 30 days, Hun will forgive him. Young Min was absolutely terrified at the thought of getting beaten again, but Hun made it clear things would be different and he would take care of everything himself. The next day, Young Min walked straight into the school cafeteria, drawing shocked stares from everyone after. His brutal humiliation by a freshman, a few even thought if they were in his position, they could never show their face at school again, but he kept going. Acting like absolutely nothing had happened, Young Min heard the whispers behind his back but forced himself to stay quiet, knowing his classmates were total hypocrites. He knew if he could endure just 1 month, the tables would turn and he would take back complete control of the school. He had zero doubts about reclaiming his crown. Still, the mocking stares around him were incredibly annoying. He was completely isolated, but kept reminding himself to just endure this 1 month. Once he graduated, he could forget every single one of them. Then, unexpectedly, one of the weakest kids in school walked up holding a milk carton. The unthinkable happened. The nerdy kid poured the milk right over Young Min's head. Young Min gritted his teeth, asking the kid if he was begging to die. Right then and there, but the kid calmly replied that Hun had given him permission to do whatever he wanted, even mockingly asking if he liked the milk. Just a few days earlier, the entire class had been talking about how much everyone hated Shin Young Min. His cruel streak and constant violence had turned daily school life into a living nightmare, with only his fists keeping him in his absolute position of power. Hun told the class that this was the exact reason he wanted to punish Shin Young Min, not just for himself, but for every single person whose life that monster had ruined. For the next month, everyone was free to do whatever they wanted to him. They could spit, slap him, or do whatever they pleased, and he would not retaliate. Hun clarified that he was not forcing anyone. It was completely up to them, and they could easily choose to ignore it and do nothing. In that case, Shin Young Min would spend his final month before graduation living peacefully without any consequences. But right now, those who have a deep grudge against Young Min have a genuine chance to make their painful school memories a little easier. If they want payback, they can take action into their own hands now. During the final years of Han Mong-hun's life, everything followed the exact same cycle. Their eyes would meet and Young Min would violently strike his head. The boy was treated like a worthless punching bag, even as his spirit began to crack. Young Min would torture him and then cruelly force him to smile as if absolutely nothing was wrong. All the victims of Young Min's systematic abuse knew that after graduation, he would not even remember their faces, but in the minds of those he traumatized, Young Min would remain a shadow for years, completely ruining any decent memory they had of high school. So now, everyone has their shot at revenge. Han Mong-hun is absolutely convinced that Young Min still has not paid the full price for his horrific crimes. He lands several heavy blows while Young Min stands there completely powerless, just like all the innocent kids he used to brutalize. Han Mong-hun keeps swinging, declaring that he is actually enjoying this, unlike Young Min, who obviously finds it. It was pretty disgusting. Nearby girls watched in pure shock as this absolute wimp fell for Hyun's traps, leaving Shin Young Min completely defenseless, just taking the abuse. No response. Then, the guy with glasses spat right into his lunch. The bully grinned, asking Shin Young Min if he remembered how many times he had done this. Now, he sneered, "You finally get the absolute pleasure of tasting your own spit for yourself." With a nasty smirk, the glasses-wearing kid told him bon appetit and called him scum. But that was only the very beginning of his endless high school nightmare. Several classmates immediately spotted him, shoving past and slamming him with their elbows. Shin Yunmin actually tried to speak up, telling them to watch where they were going. But they just laughed in his face, leaving him absolutely furious. Constant, shameless exploitation of his complete helplessness burned him up inside. Heading into the restroom, someone suddenly stuck their foot out, sending him crashing face first onto the tiles. The cruel boys roared with laughter, joking that nearly everyone in class had kissed that floor. He was trapped the next time Shin Yunmin walked down that long, miserable hallway. An empty soda can was violently slammed straight into his back. Nasty crowds started gathering in dark alleys just to ambush him. Eventually, the entire atmosphere of the school completely shifted. Even the cowards who were once too afraid to speak up were now joining in. Bullies happily took turns tormenting Shin Yunmin, exploiting his complete lack of resistance. Seriously, would you blame him if he just snapped and tore into everyone? Once his raging mind cleared, Shin Yunmin chose to grit his teeth. He had to survive this month, especially since Hyan still held him firmly by the throat. Meanwhile, Hyan was sitting quietly at his desk, lost in his own thoughts. He had planned to squeeze real evidence and names out of his victory over Shin Yunmin. But now he had to admit a minor defeat, exposing Shin Yunmin was a bust. The elite clients of the Golden Circle remained hidden. He had to regroup with what he had. By putting the pieces together, the target must have top-tier grades and serious wealth. Especially since their parents are shelling out fortunes for exclusive Golden Circle services. This was a pretty solid criteria to narrow things down. Even so, it was not nearly enough to pinpoint the culprit. Hyan decided not to rush, knowing that sooner or later the client would expose themselves. For now, he needed to handle the immediate mess right in front of him. Right on cue, another vicious group of bullies was going completely to town on Shin Yunmin. Bullies were actively thrashing him right under the noses of the entire school faculty. Hyan watched, absolute disgust built inside him as he spectated. The brutal kids and the useless teachers who ignored them were all exactly the same. Still, these ugly showdowns meant that his grand plans were finally moving forward. Total defeat, Shin Yunmin dragged himself to the restroom to recover. His phone suddenly buzzed with an incredibly strange, anonymous offer. The text promised to end all his misery for the rest of high school. Shin Yunmin was so completely broken that he would have gladly agreed to absolutely anything. He typed back instantly, saying he was down for whatever they wanted. Reading that desperate reply, Hyan let out a quiet smirk because it went exactly as expected. Shortly after, Shin Yunmin stood outside the supermarket, hesitation creeping in. He stared at his phone, wondering if he was truly ready to cross this line. Maybe it would be smarter to tough it out for a month, but in an instant. He decides to stop thinking and start acting. He slips a dark mask over his face and pulls his hood low to blend into the shadows. Without a word, Shin Yunmin marches inside the store, heading straight for the cashier who asks how he can help. Instead of answering, Shin Yunmin grabs him and slams his face violently against the counter over and over with absolute brutality. The poor clerk is completely lost. If this brutal attacker is a robber, why is he not even demanding cash? Instead of just beating him to a pulp, squinting through the pain, the clerk instantly recognizes Shin Yunmin. Later that evening, Park Min-seo meets up with his crew to reveal that Shin Yunmin beat him up inside the store. His friends can barely believe it, but Min-chul already heard some wild rumors that Hyan-seong snapped Shin Yunmin's arm. Sure enough, his right arm is in a cast. The gang cannot comprehend why Shin Yunmin is lashing out. They initially think about calling the cops, but quickly change their minds when they realize who is pulling the strings. Min-chul suggests keeping quiet and ignoring it whenever they spot Shin Yunmin. But wait, here is where things get wild. Just as the group begins to split up, they hear a mocking voice. They turn around in shock, unable to understand why their former mentor Shin Yunmin is acting like this, or what he even wants from them. especially after he went and trashed their convenience store the day before. Yunmin bluntly reveals that this entire nightmare was not his idea. He explains that Hyunseong holds a massive grudge against their crew. So for the next month, he has to make their lives a living hell. He will make every single one of them regret ever being born. Minchul's gang members stand completely paralyzed, their mouths hanging wide open. Before they can even react, Shin Yunmin lunges forward with total rage. Punches and kicks fly in a flash, proving he is a beast. He calmly apologizes, repeating that he has absolutely nothing personal against them. But they must take his place in purgatory now. The group is furious, unable to comprehend why they are being targeted after getting expelled already. They have nothing to do with the school hierarchy anymore, but Shin Yunmin does not care. He is simply refusing to tolerate any more school bullying. Staring down at these trembling cowards, he realizes they truly do not get it. They are completely oblivious to the gravity of their situation. If they had not messed up their simple job with those freshmen, none of this would happen. He wouldn't be here, shattering their pathetic faces and doing all this dirty work himself. Now it is painfully clear that these punks are both weak and stupid. They fail to realize the kind of monster they are dealing with. Even with a broken arm, Shin Yunmin knocks the punk out cold. He refuses to be a punching bag. Suddenly, Minyol slips behind him. A hidden blade pierces straight into Shin Yunmin's side, drawing blood. Minyol sneers, claiming Shin Yunmin must have a really terrible memory, since it was his own orders that dragged them into this mess in the first place. Now he is blaming everyone else when he is the real culprit. And that started this whole nightmare. Young Min was finished, collapsing helplessly, down to his knees, clutching his hand over the deep bleeding knife wound. And now, with two of them battered and one stabbed, the truth finally sank in. Hyunseong wanted them to tear each other apart. There was absolutely no way out. That cunning Hyunseong had pitted them against each other like starving dogs. The next day, the entire school buzzed with rumors about a brutal stabbing. They said thugs had knifed Youngmin. One kid claimed his uncle worked with the police. And apparently Minchial was right in the middle of that bloody brawl, all day. Students couldn't stop whispering about the fallout, who was going down for this. Would they land in a juvenile detention center or just end up with records? No one actually knew why the hell these guys had turned on each other. Even the cops found it bizarre, but the boys didn't deny anything. In fact, every single one of them begged for a quick transfer. They wanted to lock themselves away, desperate to escape whatever nightmare was waiting outside. Meanwhile, Hyunseong was standing up on the school roof, calmly chatting on his phone. He got word that Minho's family had officially packed up their lives and fled the city. Minho would probably transfer to some fancy new school. Hyunseong scoffed. It was always the same story. The rich always got off easy. That was when Chinbayam chimed in, offering to pull some dirty strings to send Minho straight to his old crowd. But Hyunseong shook his head. Not yet. Chinbayam knew it. His friend immediately realized this young monster had a much more twisted game planned. He didn't want to destroy Minho just yet. He wanted him to feel safe first, to start building a clean life, then rip it away. Chinbayam shivered. The kid was a walking nightmare, colder than any mob boss. Hyunseong ignored the comment entirely, telling him to throw all four of them in prison. Once they finished their time, they weren't to enjoy a single second of freedom. Chinbayam admitted he was terrified of crossing him. Still, he had to ask how much longer he had to play the handyman. Their original deal was clear: 1 month of grunt work, but Chinbayam was running dangerously low on patience, especially when it was this hard to claw his way up from rock bottom. But Hyunseong just stared, telling Chinbayam to remember what they had agreed on. He just needed to wait a little longer, and soon, everything would begin. In just a couple of days, there was going to be a massive housing boom. Massive construction giants would race for dominance, and profits would skyrocket. And down on the front lines, workers would be pushed to their limits. Endless shifts, breakneck speeds, absolutely zero room for error. As soon as one crew finished, the next would jump right in. The men were running on empty, completely worn down to the bone. They couldn't even catch their breath, and then disaster struck. A heavy crane load suddenly slipped, and massive steel beams began to fall. Too exhausted to react, the poor worker couldn't move. The heavy metal structures crashed down, completely pinning his lower body. The surrounding construction workers stood frozen in shock at the horrific sight. They needed an ambulance, and they needed it right now. An ambulance right away, but the foreman screamed at the workers to put away their phones, no calling anyone. The foreman made it clear that their only priority was reporting this to corporate. He did not care about helping the bleeding man if it meant halting the project. That day, the injured worker lay waiting for 2 long hours. The nearest hospital was just a few minutes away, yet corporate delay kept him suffering. Then the company delivered the final blow. Corporate boldly claimed the accident was entirely his father's fault, and that the firm suffered massive losses because of it. There was no intention of paying a single cent for his pain. Claiming the worker deserved absolutely nothing, talk about a heartless move. Marched on with property prices projected to keep soaring endlessly. Beside his father's hospital bed, the young man wept in silence. It was the exact moment his world broke, denied any shred of justice. Meanwhile, Chungbum was just slacking off near another active construction site. Exhausted and desperately wanting a nap, he still had to supervise. The heavy cargo crane operations required his constant oversight. Honestly, he would rather be grabbing food or hanging with his girlfriend. Being stuck here was miserable, but his trust in Hyun kept him going. The kid might be young, but he was incredibly sharp. Plus, the big boss, Kyunjin, had completely lost faith in his younger son. Passing the corporate management reins directly to the older brother instead. Deciding not to overthink things, Chungbum finished his quiet smoke break and walked out of the restroom right when a sudden scream pierced the air. Workers screamed that the structure was failing. Chungbum rushed over. Desperate to see the damage, what he saw next made his blood run cold. He saw with his own eyes that a massive concrete slab had completely collapsed. Poor materials, clearly, but Chungbum did not care about excuses right now. His only priority was finding out if anyone was trapped under the rubble. It turned out about 6 workers had been right in the impact zone. Yet the foreman casually waved it off, saying they would handle it internally. Chungbum instantly saw the absolute, terrifying reality of this situation. The man was not planning on saving his trapped colleagues. He only cared about covering up the disaster for corporate, typical greed. Pure rage took over. Chungbum grabbed the foreman by the collar, shaking him. Hyun's words echoed in his mind, "In a crisis, you forget about profits. When lives are on the line on a busy site, nothing else matters. As a true manager, you must protect the people first, always." Chungbum shoved the foreman hard again, shouting his demands to make him listen. He aggressively ordered him to call the rescue team and an ambulance right now. The foreman stammered that a call would shut the whole project down. Chungbum yelled back that he did not care about their losses. Money can be replaced, but human lives cannot. Still, the man hesitated. Whining about the delays, Chungbum snapped, demanding immediate action, swearing that he would take full responsibility for whatever came next. Take full responsibility for everything, the man barks at the builders to immediately. Gather every crew, save whoever they can, and he will handle. The rest, they also need to think about paying compensation for. All the physical damage caused, the foreman does not need to worry right now. Because this is not on him, Chongbom firmly believes that human life is always worth fighting to save. Soon, all of the emergency services are notified and rescue teams are racing to the scene. Changbom wants to know if they can clear some debris on their own. But his younger brother warns that it is way too dangerous. They have been strictly warned not to touch anything. The professionals have to do their job first. Changbom demands they call again and hurry the rescuers, promising he will take the fall for any issues. Just then, another scream echoes as more of the ceiling crumbles down. A panicked worker runs up to Changbom and starts explaining. He says there is absolutely no cement on the rebar. It is completely clean because the builders rushed the job. They pulled the frames before the cement could even set, which is exactly why the floor collapsed. Changbom promises he will handle this mess later, but none of that matters right now. The main goal is saving lives, and everyone has to work together. Soon, the ambulances arrive and they get incredibly lucky. The victims only have minor injuries, nothing life-threatening. That is the good news, but there is also bad news. Articles about the collapse are already popping up online, painting the company in a terrible light. And trust me, this is just the beginning. The PR team can no longer cover this up, and the company's reputation has already been crushed. Changbom turns to his younger brother, asking what they should do now. Changbom admits he has absolutely no plan. He just rushed to call the rescue squad. Right then, his phone rings. It is the company's CEO, Coma. Changbom knows a massive storm is coming and decides to ignore the call, but his father keeps calling, and the manager wants to know what the chairman thinks about all this. Finally, his father hangs up, allowing Changbom to